In a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. George Orwell. Yeah. This is Blunt Politics. The only podcast where we don't talk about politics. We be about politics. And our mission statement is to empower, educate, and encourage everyone to speak out against fascism. Speak out against injustice and fight for freedom and equality for everyone. This is Blunt Politics, and we ain't stopping till they put us in the grave. We ain't gonna be quiet, and we ain't gonna be scared, and we ain't gonna go along with the crowd. This is Blunt Politics.
What's happening, guys? What do you say we jump right into it? How's everybody doing? Unfortunately, the craziness must ensue. Bombs away, I guess. Looks like things have degraded much like we expected, and it's more than likely at the moment that we are speaking right now, the bombs and missiles are still flying. So we'll have all the reporting to come from that, from CENTCOM, retaliations by Iran, what they hit, where they struck. But again, yeah, the bombs and missiles are flying, ladies and gentlemen, for, what seems to be like a nightly thing at this point. I don't think either side really wants to make this a prolonged excursion, a prolonged escalation, but each side trying to get their shots in. So we'll be talking about that. Obviously, I want to talk about the New York Times article detailing the White House meltdown as it pertains to the Epstein files and how they were trying to mitigate the damages coming out of that. So there was a New York Times article, and there was also a Mediaite article that kind of broke down the New York Times article. New York Times article's a pretty lengthy and well-researched piece, I must say. So to break it down a little bit for the conservation of time, we'll be looking at the Mediaite article as well. We'll also be looking at the rest of the we'll be finishing out the Rest is Politics video from earlier, which was kind of telling us about how close we are to economic collapse. And as we're speaking about the bombs and missiles and drones continuing to be shot right now, it seems like it's, right in line with what we need to be thinking about. So that Candace Owens talking about her trip to Russia. She has her first podcast since, her family excursion over there to Russia. So I wanted to take a look at what, Russian propaganda she's pushing and see if we could call that out. There's a video here talking about Ukraine's 1,000-kilometer flamingo strike, which I want to see if we could get into as well as some frontline updates. So there's a lot to get into. So I appreciate you guys for joining me. Hit that like button. It is 10 June 2026. My name is Brian. This is Blunt Politics. What do you say we say hi to the chat before we do anything, right? It's the most important part of the show right here because you guys make this happen. You guys make it possible, so you guys deserve some screen time. What's going on, Tiff? How are you? Thank you so much for being here. What's going on, Jim? What's up, Nick? What's going on, El Rondo? How are you guys? DPD, appreciate you guys being here. Thank you so much. What's going on? Hit that like button on the way in. Tricenia, Jamie, how are you over there on Facebook? Laser Swords, what's going on? Yeah, what's up, Dyslexic? How are you? What's going on? What's up, Gamer? What's up, Wes? Appreciate you guys. Make sure you hit that like button on the way in. I'm sure people will be filtering in as we speak, but what do you say we just jump right into it? A little bit of the news coming from, again, the latest strikes, the latest ongoing war with Iran, as people still somehow calling it a ceasefire, which is just, I don't know if there's anything more frustrating right now than people calling it this a ceasefire as they're simultaneously reporting on bombs and missiles and Apaches being shot down and radar sites being taken out, and Donald Trump again threatening the annihilation of the Iranian population. But let me see if we can throw this on the screen for you guys, because it was this from CENTCOM. We'll just kind of start at the beginning and then we'll work our way through. We got some some CENTCOM reporting. We got here from Clash Report. We got some from OSINT Technical, just kind of giving us an update on where I believe the United States was striking. And then because Donald Trump gives his information straight to people like Barack Ravid and Fox News, Trey Yingst, Jennifer Griffin, those people, we'll have to kind of filter away the propaganda and see what's going on, because Trey Yingst has a little bit of an update as to what's been going on as well. But this is from CENTCOM. U.S. Central Command forces began launching additional self-defense strikes, which is, again, a ridiculous thing to be calling this, as we're impeding upon somebody else's airspace, as we have like a good portion of our military and our Navy in somebody else's territory. It's just, you know what I mean? Just crazy to be calling it self-defense strikes. But at 5:15, so 5:15 Eastern time, I believe is roughly 1:15 around the Strait of Hormuz, which is typically when you start seeing things kick off, the 11 p.m., 12 p.m., 12 a.m., and then on after that. So again, 5:15, right in line with what you would expect, where multiple targets in Iran at the commander-in-chief's direction. The strikes are in response to Iran's unwarranted and continued aggression. I believe they're still talking about the downing of the Apache AH-64 helicopter there, which again was split in half apparently by a Shahed drone. Lucky for the pilots, it didn't explode, but they had to make a crash landing in the sea. That took about 2 hours after that for a sea drone. Another thing that really tells you that they're not comfortable with their superiority in the area is the fact that they sent in a sea drone. Apparently the first time that that's ever been put into use by the United States military. So I don't think that they would allow those guys to bob in the fucking Strait of Hormuz for 2 hours. I think they would have sent in a helicopter, a rescue helicopter, something that could have got there quicker than 2 hours if they didn't suspect that the Iranians would again target that craft. So better to send in a drone, not expose or put any other military service members at risk, and try to get these people out of the water, then again, send in another Black Hawk, send in another Apache, and risk that being shot down as well. So it doesn't show that they had confidence, because like I said, they wouldn't let them sit there for 2 hours and have to send in a sea drone if they thought they could just send in a rescue Black Hawk, put a rescue swimmer in there, pull them up, get them fuck out of there in way less than 2 hours. So that's another thing that I noticed as well. I know people were talking about the originality, or so to speak, of the mission to use the drone, but I think there's a very specific reason as to why they did that as well. So that was CENTCOM. Like I said, this is 5:36, 10th of June today. So we'll go on here. This is from Clash Report. So we'll just see if we can see what else has been reported in this. This was about an hour ago. The IRGC Navy says 2 vessels that attempted to illegally transit the Strait of Hormuz was struck after violating the passage restrictions. Let's see what else was going on here. It says also an hour ago, IRGC Navy says, following the repeated violation of the ceasefire terms by the American enemy, the Strait of Hormuz will be closed until further notice. We warn that no vessel should depart from its anchorage in the Persian Gulf or the Gulf of Oman. Approaching the Strait of Hormuz will be regarded as cooperation with the enemy. U.S. officials to Fox News say U.S. military strikes targeting Iran are ongoing. Like I said, that was about an hour ago. Iran's armed forces say they will respond forcefully and decisively to any U.S. military attack or hostile action in the region. Like I said, at the moment that we're speaking right now, I wouldn't be surprised if they are enacting this right this second. But again, we'll see what's being reported here. It says, breaking Trump. Iran asked me to stop bombing. Bombing will stop shortly. That's coming from Fox News. I've also seen that the Iranians said that was false. Nobody's talked to Donald Trump. Again, showing you the inconsistencies between the rhetoric coming from the White House and what we're hearing from the Iranian side as well. It says, Trump to Fox News, Israelis are not involved in these Iran strikes. Trying to make that very clear. Trump says that the U.S. will, quote, bomb the shit out of them tomorrow if Iran does not agree to a deal. But like I said, I think they're very willing to do this for several nights, maybe even a week, 2 weeks or something like that. But we know about the stockpile issue, right? So I don't think that they're willing to allow this to continue for, this type of actions, this type of escalation to go on, for long, really, to tell you the truth. They're really trying to hope that, these strikes right now can be enough to break the back of the Iranians, when we've just not seen that be the case. Right, we've just not seen that, like these minimal strikes that are taking out, radar installations, or they're hitting, Kashima Island and different things like that. Hasn't had the impact that the United States military or Donald Trump thought it was going to have, and they continue to do the same thing over and over again. This says Trump to Fox News, 49 Tomahawk missiles were used to hit targets inside Iran. U.S. fighter jets are now operating over the skies of Iran. Trump claims that, quote, top Iranian officials called him and asked him to stop the bombing. But like I said, I've obviously seen the reports on the Iranian side saying that was not true. Let's see here. Trump to Fox News. This was the most violated ceasefire in the history of the world, says Trump to Fox News. Again, that's because it wasn't a ceasefire ever. Iran denies Trump's claim. Here we go. Iran denies Trump's claim that Iranian officials contacted him, calling it false in an attempt to cover up a retreat from the conflict with Iran. Let's see here. CENTCOM says that commercial ships are continuing to transit in and out of the Strait of Hormuz tonight. So let's see. I think that was the last thing reported here. We'll go on because this was Trey Yingst, right? So like I said, we don't typically like to follow these idiots or listen to these idiots, especially on, Fox News propaganda, but he's the one that gets the direct phone calls typically from Trump. Like I said, Barack Ravid of Axios, same thing. So let's just see what he has to say, because this says he spoke with President Trump tonight as he oversaw the U.S. military strikes against Iran from the Situation Room. And I think a few of the quotes that we just read from Clash Report are coming from this interview or coming from this phone call. Says President Trump told me directly with Iranian officials tonight who asked him to stop bombing. Like we just said, that's been said to have been false. 49 Tomahawk missiles have been fired by the United States at the time we spoke, along with bombing from fighter jets. Closest target to Tehran, approximately 40 miles outside the city. Trump added that the bombing will stop shortly, but if they don't sign the agreement, we will, quote, bomb the shit out of them. President Trump called this the most violated ceasefire in the history of the world. J.D. Vance told me yesterday that the United States is dealing with both moderate and more extreme voices in Iran as part of the negotiation process. I believe this is as Qatari officials were actually in Iran trying to, get something going as far as peace talks. But again, this has been a pretty regular nightly thing. Over the last few nights, strikes, retaliations, you hit me, I'm going to hit you. This is because of you. No, you because of me. This bullshit that's been going back and forth, this tit for tat. So I just want to jump into a couple minutes of this and see if we can get any other insight, any other information as to what's been hit, what's taking place. I know there was this as well. OSINT Technical was kind of giving us a little breakdown of where the explosions were heard and what was being hit. So we'll take a look at that after, see if we can get a more detailed look at what's been struck so far. So just a couple minutes of this. So I appreciate you guys. Hit that like button. Again, we're going over the most recent attacks, the most recent strikes between Iran and the U.S. Obviously, we're expecting a pretty severe retaliation by the Iranians if it's not already underway. So like I said, it changes so fast and things kick off so quickly that you always got to keep your eye on it. So all right, let's just take a quick look at a couple minutes of this. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. I very much appreciate you. This is Fox News with their update about the latest on the U.S. launches and attacks on Iran.
Yeah, Laura, good evening. I just spoke with President Trump, who is currently in the Situation Room with Vice President J.D. Vance, along with Special Envoys Kushner and Witkoff. The president giving new insight into what is taking place as we speak. There is an ongoing bombing campaign against the Iranian regime. The president tells Fox News that 49 Tomahawk missiles were used to hit targets inside of Iran, some of them as close as 40 miles from the Iranian capital of Tehran. The president said that U.S. fighter jets are also operating over the skies of Iran, taking out radar systems and air defense systems.
But a ceasefire, guys, a ceasefire. It's a ceasefire, but it's not a ceasefire. I don't know if this is quite meeting the threshold to make it not a ceasefire, but also a ceasefire. The bombs are dropping, right? We're taking out installations all over the place, including within 40 miles of Tehran, but also a ceasefire. I just want to make that very clear. It's got to be also called a ceasefire as we're reporting on U.S. launching new attacks on Iran.
The southwestern part of the country, close to the Persian Gulf. This is all taking place as the Iranians are trying to get the United States to stop the bombing campaign. President Trump told me that Iran called him tonight. Top Iranian officials and President Trump spoke directly.
And again, that's been disputed per the Iranian side. Like I said, you can pull it up right here. Let's see. I think it was, right here. Iran denies Trump's claim that Iranian officials contacted him, calling it false in an attempt to cover up a retreat from the conflict with Iran. So like I said, take it with a grain of salt what you hear. But this is also coming from the mouth of Donald Trump. So he's got more than enough reason to try to lie and make himself look like the victor and the big, strong, tough guy in this when he's anything but. And he continues to get his face kicked in by the Iranians in both the negotiating process and also the military actions because they are definitely unfortunately not working. And as much as, Pete Hegseth loves to say, we'll do this tonight and tomorrow night. Well, you've done that several times before, and it doesn't seem to be having any impact, or definitely not the impact that you thought it was going to have. But again, I digress. This was a little bit more of the reporting here from Fox News about the U.S. Launching new attacks on Iran tonight.
To the commander-in-chief tonight as the president was sitting in the Situation Room, and he told me that the Iranians asked them to stop bombing. And the president said to me, the bombing will stop shortly. I asked him what will happen if the Iranians do not sign an agreement that was put forward by American negotiators. President Trump said, quote, we'll bomb the S out of them tomorrow night. And so the president is leaving the military option on the table if the Iranians are unwilling to sign this good faith deal that would ultimately open the Strait of Hormuz and ensure that they cannot advance a nuclear program toward a nuclear bomb. That is the bottom
right,
line.
because like we've said, I don't know, what is it now? The 15 to 20,000 different targets the United States says they've hit, the amount of their Navy that they've taken out, the amount of their Air Force that has been taken out, the amount of their leadership that has been taken out, like all of that so far hasn't been enough to bring them to the table, hasn't even been enough for the Iranians to get them to change any of the wish list, any of the key points and what they're asking for so far. None of that has ever changed. You know what I mean? So far, all of those other bombing campaigns didn't work. But if we do it for just 2 more nights, like if we do it tonight and tomorrow night, maybe that'll be enough to force them to the table. It's like this ridiculous mindset of not having any other exit, not having any other off ramp, and just making it seem like, okay, we got to show you whose dick is bigger every single night. So if you take down an Apache, that means we have to strike and shoot up 50 Tomahawks. And if you retaliate with, 10 ballistic missiles, that means we're going to have to do something in return. It's like, at that point, we're just wasting bombs. We're just wasting missiles. We're just wasting our stockpile and getting absolutely fucking nowhere, right? Which is seemingly where we've gotten so far in this entire thing.
I hear that President Trump has reiterated over and over again the reason Operation Epic Fury began was to prevent the Iranian regime from obtaining a nuclear weapon. I asked the president if the ceasefire is over. He told me this was the most violated ceasefire in the history of the world.
I mean, just what an asinine question to ask. Hey, sir, I know you're calling me to report on the several targets that you've struck inside of Iran, and that the fact that the United States Air Force is currently doing bombing missions over Iranian airspace and all these other things that are going on as far as targets being struck. But can you speak to me about the ceasefire? Can you talk to me about how's the ceasefire doing? It's like, shut the fuck up. Jesus Christ. Like, it's just how they continue to say the word and play the game along with these morons that, again, only say that to buy themselves time is crazy to me. But he goes on to continue talking about what Donald Trump was saying. But let's throw this on the screen real quick and just see kind of where these attacks were. This is by OSIT Technical. He says explosions heard in the Iranian port city of Sarik, state media. And that's, again, just on this side of the Strait of Hormuz. Iranian state media says reports also of an explosion in Manab city, which is again where the original, the strike on the girls' school was, if you'll remember, in Manab. So that's where the Sirik is. That's the first one been reported. Here's Manab on the top near Bandar Abbas. Let's see here. They go on. It says U.S. strikes on Iran have started. U.S. official to Barak Ravid. That was 3 hours ago. Explosions reported in multiple Iranian Persian Gulf cities as the U.S. begins a new round of strikes. So this is where they've struck so far. And again, this is as the reporting was incoming. So this obviously will change. Bandar Abbas, Manab, Sarik, Asuleya. Let's see here. So reports U.S. strikes on Iranian targets roughly a half hour into tonight's renewed air war. Also, you can see Qasem Island, Hegem Island. So you can see different targets being added. Kargan, Manab, as we talked about, Bandar Abbas. A new round of U.S. airstrikes has been reported in and around Bandar Abbas, home to the headquarters of Iran's IRGC and regular Navy. So you can see where on the map that was as well. Iran state media reports that the Iranian forces are attempting to attack American ships near the Strait of Hormuz. Iranian state media reports that 2 commercial ships attempting to cross the Strait of Hormuz have been attacked tonight. And just for the sake of, journalistic integrity, it has been reported by CENTCOM that was reported to be false. But again, take all this with a grain of salt, because obviously both sides have not only the ability to, but obviously the reasons to lie about the the level of victories that they've achieved in this new round of U.S. airstrikes reported in Bandar Abbas, Iran. Trump to Fox spoke directly with Iranian officials. U.S. jets flying over Tehran. We talked about that. There's a little bit from that interview we were just looking at. Senior Iranian official says that Trump's claim about contacting Iranian leadership to end tonight's airstrike is false. State broadcaster and the IRIB official called the claim, quote, covering for escaping a war against Iran. And like I said, this is the U.S. CENTCOM. Islamic Revolutionary Guard claims that the Strait of Hormuz is closed. Truth, commercial ships are continuing to transit in and out of the Strait of Hormuz tonight. And again, this is as Donald Trump was making this claim that they had some secret mission going on to like extract ships through the Strait of Hormuz in the dead of night. Again, if this is in fact true, why the fuck he would come out and say anything is beyond me. Just shows his stupidity and maybe his arrogance. Like, you think if that was something that was going right, like one of the only things that was going right, if they were able to do that every night without the Iranians knowing and no ships being struck, if in fact what he's saying is true, and again, I'd say that with a big if, why the fuck would you come out and say that in public, right? The strait's still closed, so you'd think that would be an ongoing mission. But now that the Iranians know about it, there might be some, I don't know, added issues, might be some added roadblocks thrown in the way. I'm just saying. So, again, if you think what he's saying is in fact true, it's fucking unbelievably stupid for him to come out and say it in public and plaster it all over fucking Truth Social and let the Iranians know what they've been doing. And if it's a lie, then again, it's just one of his many and ongoing lies that he's been saying for this as well, for this entire war. But I'll throw this on here because what have we been saying about the Bab el-Mandeb? So I think we're getting ever closer to seeing that become a reality, unfortunately, and I don't want to be the one to sit here and say I told you so, because obviously we're all going to be impacted together if and when that does happen. But this was an official statement put out. Let me just see if I can find it here. It says right here, this is Iran's Parliamentary National Security Committee says Iran, quote, may expand its territory into the, quote, next war. Okay, after previously extending its territorial claims to the Strait of Hormuz. I believe what they're talking about here is the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. So we saw the Houthis somewhat get engaged with launching strikes into Israel and talking about how they were not going to allow any Israeli ships through the Bab el-Mandeb, through the Red Sea there. So it seems to me like we're getting closer and closer to the Iranians kind of activating the Houthis fully as far as their ability to control the Bab el-Mandeb, which would put added and extra pressure on the world economy. This also says here that explosions heard Tariq Manab, Isfahan, and Qasem Island. That's per Jennifer Griffin. That's also from Fox News. But again, this is who Donald Trump calls himself to give him the scoop. But I do believe, like I said, when I saw this, I thought it was pretty clear that their National Security Committee says Iran may expand its territory into the next war. Right. So that's a very generic, bland, non-specific statement there. And I think what they're referring to is the Bab el-Mandeb and the Houthis. But you know what I mean? I could be wrong. Let me know what you think in the chat, what they're referring to. But that's by Fethuk's Network there, speaking about, again, Iran's Parliamentary National Security Committee, stating and threatening kind of an escalation to this war. But that's kind of what's going on so far. We can check back in later on in the show and see if there's anything else coming in from the time that we went live. Like I said, this stuff changes so quick, and you would think to expect a retaliation from the Iranians if in fact it hasn't happened yet. Let me see. I'll go to Clash Report. Right, I'll go to Clash Report, throw this on your screen, and we'll just do a quick refresh, see if again there was anything new to report here. Let's see here. So this was an hour ago. So it doesn't look like there's anything new as far as that's concerned. No U.S. warships struck. Commercial ships are continuing through the strait. And like I said, we'll see if we can check that later on. We'll see if we can check some other accounts as well, see if there's anything popping off. I'll do OSINT one more time, do a refresh here. Throw this on your screen just to make sure. This is 2 minutes ago. Sounds of massive airstrike in Karaj, Iran just a few moments ago. Like I said, things are still happening. See if we can get some video footage of this. So again, just some of the first video that I've seen come in from some of these strikes tonight. This was 8 minutes ago. Airstrike reported in the Iranian city of Karaj, just to the west of Tehran a few minutes ago. See if we can pop into this real quick, see what they captured. So there's no sound on it, but you can see strike in just the left part of the screen over here where my mouse is. You can see the flash and then the fireball in the background. It goes out pretty quickly, but just right there, you can catch it in the background real quick. Let's see here. This was 13 minutes ago. Explosions reported near the Iranian city of Karaj and Bandar Abbas in the last few moments. So again, like I said, as we speak, this is ongoing. Iranian air raid on Bahrain ongoing with sirens sounding. So like I said, expect the retaliations. Again, Iran is reportedly targeting the Isa air base. What else is going on? Sirens have been sounded. Citizens and residents are urged to remain calm and head to the nearest safe place. That's the Ministry of the Interior of who? Of Bahrain. So that's Bahrain Ministry of the Interior giving that out. Let's see here. Iran's military command announces the Strait of Hormuz is now completely closed. So it looks like that's the first thing that I've seen as far as retaliation strikes by Iran, right? As well as, again, the ongoing strikes by the United States in Iran itself. So we'll see if we can keep an eye on that, see if there's anything that pops up. But let's dive into this, because this was something that a lot of people were speaking about, and rightly so. This is the New York Times Magazine. Inside the White House freakout over the Epstein files. The president's top advisors gathered in a series of situation room meetings as they struggled to contain a scandal engulfing Donald Trump himself. This is by Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan. It says Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan, White House reporters for the Times, are authors of their forthcoming regime change inside the imperial presidency of Donald Trump. The article is drawn from reporting done from that book. And again, it is a very researched. They got a ton of people speaking under condition of anonymity and other things about this. So it's very well done. But like I said, this is a pretty lengthy article. So for the sake of time, I'll see if I can bring this one up. And we'll just kind of go through this Mediaite, which just kind of condenses it a little bit. It gives the 6, as it calls it, splashiest revelations from Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan's blockbuster book excerpt on Trump and Epstein. So if you guys will allow me, I just want to go through, a few paragraphs of this, because it talks about how, and there was an excerpt. Hold on. There was an excerpt that I saw, and I don't know if it was on this website. Let me see if I go back here. There was an excerpt that kind of talked about how they got this information, and I don't know if it was like attached to their book or whatnot. I did see it read, but, I don't know. I'm probably not going to see it now. But it gives basically, kind of a recounting of how they got the information, kind of what rules and ethics and again, journalistic laws and stuff that they used to get this information, why they were, if they got a quote, it was directly from a person. If they kind of, filled in the blanks a little bit, it was because they knew enough about the person that was being spoken about, either because they spent enough time around them or they've given them interviews before. So it was pretty well done. Like I said, credit where credit is due, and I'm sure we have gripes about both of them. But let me see if we'll go back to this Mediaite, and we'll just go through, like I said, a couple paragraphs. And this says the New York Times published a huge story on Wednesday titled "Inside the White House Freakout Over the Epstein Files." A look at how President Donald Trump's administration handled the release of the Jeffrey Epstein files. Reporting from the New York Times, political reporters Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan spotlighted a startling amount of behind-the-scenes drama at the White House over the late sex criminal. Haberman and Swan shared the juicy details on the backroom verbal brawls and maneuvering that went into the administration's Jeffrey Epstein strategy. Wednesday's article is based on reporting that is in their upcoming book. It's called Regime Change Inside the Imperial Presidency of Donald Trump, which will take a look at Trump's 4 years in exile, his political comeback, and his second administration. Here's what stood out from the Epstein freakout story. So it goes on to say here. 1. Trump berated Charlie Kirk. Haberman and Swan wrote that Trump was not happy with some of his most influential supporters like Charlie Kirk, Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, publicly pushing the administration to release more of the files on Epstein in July 2025. After a Turning Point USA turned into a, quote, Epstein grievance fest, where several speakers ripped then Attorney General Pam Bondi, Trump called Kirk and scolded him. Kirk had held a Turning Point USA event the previous day that turned into an Epstein grievance fest, with one speaker after another bashing then Attorney General Pam Bondi over her handling of the situation. Trump had called Kirk and scolded him. That happened on July 12th, the same day that Trump backed Bondi on social media and said his fans need to stop wasting time and energy on Jeffrey Epstein. So you can see how it's basically directly related to what he was watching on TV, as it typically is what his tweets are about. He's either watching Fox News or he's watching OAN or RSBN or whatever the hell he typically watches. And then that's what, gets him to get on the fucking True Social, and, he'll put about 14 different tweets out there because of Jesse Waters or because of Sean Hannity or what's the other, Mark Levin or whoever the dickheads are at the time. But this is, he saw these people at the turning points talking about the Epstein files, demanding more accountability, demanding more transparency, demanding Pam Bondi to fucking do something, demanding the Trump administration to do something. And that's the same exact day, July 12th, that he went on to social media and said his fans need to stop wasting time and energy on Jeffrey Epstein. Right. So he saw his people talking about it, went on True Social, went on social media and told them basically all to fuck off. Right. That's typically what the reading of that could be. So this goes on to say, too, how Dan Bongino went nuclear over handling of the Epstein files. It says, then FBI Director Dan Bongino berated Pam Bondi after the Justice Department published a memo in July 2025 that said Epstein did not have an incriminating, quote, client list and that no further disclosure would be made. Here's how Haberman and Swan described Bongino's reaction. The day the memo was released, Bongino showed up to a daily Justice Department meeting with the FBI staff and the Attorney General. He was in a volcanic mood, as described here. As soon as he entered the room, he erupted at Pam Bondi, shouting at her. He said, "You fucked this up from the start." Again, Bongino yelling at Pam Bondi. You will recount that Bongino is a subordinate of Pam Bondi at this moment in time. He says, "You fucked everything up from the start," Bongino yelled. "The way you've been talking about this, the dumb fucking charade about with the Epstein files, they're on my desk," probably in a mocking manner. He said it, "Nonsense. All the promises to the folks out there." Kash Patel and Bongino both subsequently told a White House official that Pam Bondi needed to resign. Remember, all this was going back and forth, and people were speculating Bongino wasn't long for this administration, and that this stuff was actually taking place behind the scenes. So it fits in line with the reporting we heard at the time from Bongino and at least his relationship with Pam Bondi. So this goes on and says, number 3, J.D. Vance tried to broker a sit down with Joe Rogan for Epstein files cleanup, right? Again, I'm telling you, this is crazy. They understand what was going on. They actually had meetings to make sure that they could either trick their base or how they could trick the American public, how they could get rid of this, how they could obfuscate and defend for Donald Trump's involvement in these files. It's all right here. They all had a fucking part in this. So J.D. Vance tried to coordinate an interview with podcaster Joe Rogan, which would have been tied to the Justice Department launching its Epstein files website. The administration had pushed for then Deputy AG Todd Blanche to go on Rogan to discuss the files, but Rogan told Vance he didn't want him on the show during a phone call. Excuse me. Vance argued that if he were the one to appear on Rogan's show, only a part of the conversation would be about Epstein. Haberman and Swan wrote. The rest of the interview, he told the group, could be about the president's recently passed legislation and what it would do for working families. That 2025 podcast never came together. This came after Vance told others in the administration he, quote, feared losing some of the so-called low-propensity voters, like young men, due to the Epstein response. And number 4, Kash Patel pushed for Bondi's immediate resignation after nothing to see here Epstein files memo. FBI Director Kash Patel, still acting FBI Director right now, and Bongino, no longer a part of this administration, both told the White House official that Bondi needed to quit her job. And then when the aforementioned memo was published, Swan and Haberman wrote, 2 days later, the two men were summoned to a meeting with Susie Wiles and Bondi in the Situation Room complex. They were the last to enter the small wood-paneled room. Seated around the table were Bondi, Wiles, Blanche, and Taylor Budovich, one of Wiles' deputies. The moment Bongino sat down, Wiles told him that she had been informed he'd leaked a sensitive story about Epstein and Trump to ABC News. Bongino said, "I'll tell you what, I'll give you $100,000 cash right now. I'm not kidding. Walk out to the West Exec, put that reporter on speaker, and get him to admit I leaked it." $100,000. So you can see a very contentious exchange here. I don't know if they were trying to set him up and get him a little hot under the collar, or if they actually thought he had leaked something. It says, Wiles snapped back. While we all got ourselves into this, Bongino cut her off. And again, Bongino, a subordinate, right, a lower on the totem pole person than basically everybody else that's sitting in that room, cut her off and said, no. We didn't get ourselves into anything. I warned you guys about this the whole time, and you ignored me. And exactly what I said was going to happen happened. And now you're pretending I was in on this. I was never in on this. Wiles then told Bongino the Trump team needed to be, quote, all in and agreed to move forward. Bongino said he was not all in and on the plan, and then stormed out of the room. Forget it, I'm out of here, Bongino said. So, I mean, you can tell like this is the chaotic way in which this administration was working and continues to work to this day behind the scenes. So they love to portray themselves as all on the same side, and I have your back, you have mine, and Pam Bondi talking shit to the different senators and trying to defend Donald Trump. But really, when the doors are closed, right, when the cameras aren't on, when you don't really know what's going on, this is how they're fucking treating each other and acting behind the scenes. So number 5, Bongino predicted Epstein would be Trump's, quote, Iran-Contra, which is crazy. Shortly after Bongino vented to a confidant that Epstein is going to be the president's Iran-Contra affair, he also went off on Pam Bondi again, saying Blondie fucked this whole thing up, using a nickname for the AG coined by Laura Loomer. It says, quote, she was the one on TV saying over and over they all had this stuff. This was never anything. We were always clear about that. But now everyone thinks we did something wrong and I gave up everything. I don't know if he's talking about his podcast or whatnot. And now it's all disappeared because people think we screwed something up with Epstein. Says Vance pitched a Tucker Carlson interview while Ghislaine Maxwell on behalf of the administration, right? Vance at one point was panicked over how the Epstein saga was dividing Trump's MAGA base. His solution, Vance floated to colleagues an extraordinary PR gambit at the White House to enlist Tucker Carlson to interview Epstein's longtime girlfriend and co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell in prison. I don't know, like what was... like you could speculate in the chat, like what would be the benefit to Donald Trump in order to have Tucker Carlson go interview Ghislaine Maxwell? I guess it says right here, but Vance believed it might help the president if Maxwell was willing to state that Trump had not been part of any wrongdoing with Epstein, Haberman, and Swinrod. So basically, just, hey, you say this on camera and we'll make sure we can move you to an even cushier prison, right? We'll see if we can, get you an even more sweetheart deal somewhere else. I'm sure that's what he had in mind. But again, those were the kind of the 6 juiciest moments there. I would advise you, and I'll throw this link in the chat here to the New York Times Magazine article based on the book there, just so in case you guys want to go check that whole thing out. But it's a pretty well written, well researched. Got a lot of people talking about it as far as like on the inside scoops and stuff like that. So let me throw this back on, and you can see this is a pretty substantial piece here, right? So there was here it is. Let me read this real quick because this is the author's note that I was looking for, just to kind of show you how they got the information and where this came from. So it says, this article is adapted from the reporting from our book, Regime Change Inside the Imperial Presidency of Donald Trump, as we talked about. It says the bulk of the reporting took place from the spring of 2023 to the spring of 2026. During that time, we conducted more than 1,000 interviews with a wide range of people close to President Trump, including campaign officials, White House staff members, officials serving in government departments and agencies, former aides, donors, lawmakers, friends, and business associates. Many of our interviews were conducted on the journalistic ground rule of deep background, agreed to in advance, which meant we could use the information but not to identify who gave it to us. Throughout the reporting process, we made extensive efforts to contact the individuals named and give them ample opportunity to offer counter perspective. When we used direct quotes, those quotes came either from the person speaking, from somebody who heard that person directly, or from contemporaneous notes, recordings, or transcripts. When we paraphrase, it's because witnesses or participants in the dialogue could not recall the precise wording, but we were confident about the thrust of the message expressed. Where there were discrepancies between the accounts of participants in meetings, we generally erred on the side of removing the disagreed upon material. In some instances, we relied upon our own judgment of various sources, reliability based on our long histories of covering Trump and his inner circle. Over the course of these past 3 years, during our daily reporting for the New York Times, each of us has spoken to Donald Trump multiple times, and the president sat for an hour-long interview with us on March 16th, 2026. And again, you'll recall that Jonathan Swan, I still to this day think had the best interview as far as making Trump look like an idiot and pushback that has been done. So, you can see there how they got their information, how they went about compiling this story together. So like I said, if you guys want to check that out, I put the link in the chat there. All right, let's dive on to this as well. I appreciate you guys. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. My name is Brian. This is Blunt Politics. And again, this was a video we were looking at this morning, but didn't quite get through everything that I wanted to get through. And again, as we're talking about the continued bombing and retaliation strikes by Iran, ships being hit, helicopters being hit and down, people having to be rescued and stuff. This economic disaster that is looming with diesel, fertilizer, jet fuel, the whole 9 yards, everything that is, globally shipped. You know what I mean? The African markets, the Asian markets, the European markets are they're getting desperately close to going over the edge as far as that's concerned. And it's going to be even more difficult to get back to any sense of normalcy if in fact that takes place. And then again, add the talks and the reporting of the Bab el-Mandeb into this whole thing. And, I believe it's pretty easy to see how much this could get, exponentially worse, even though it's been pretty disastrous thus far. But like I said, 723, I think we're at the right place here. This is the worst economic crisis, the consequences of Trump's Iran war. And I might just rewind just a couple seconds here just to kind of integrate us back into where we were. And like I said, they're speaking about, their experiences at a Scandinavian conference that they were at, speaking to very intelligent people about just how close we are as far as the economic crisis with fuel, energy, and those sorts of things. And you can tell how shook they are. Right, you can tell that it really kind of got to them, who was speaking to them, how knowledgeable they were in the timeline that they were given. So I think there's only about a couple more minutes of this. What else do we have to cover as far as the rest of this show? Yeah, we got this one here from Candace Owens talking about her Russian propaganda tour. So I want to call that out as well. And then we got some Preston Stewart, some Dennis Davidoff giving us some frontline updates as well. Sorry, let's dive into this one. We'll see how far we can get through this. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 25K. Thank you to the chat. Thank you to everybody in the chat. I appreciate you guys. All right, we're out. Let's go.
Is the cost required to offer what they call robust tax reductions for corporate zero-emission vehicle purchases. In other words, you could subsidize your entire corporate vehicle fleet in Germany for that cost.
So this is where they're talking about the added cost to Europe. I'll let him talk. I'll let him start off there, and then we'll go on to the rest of the clips. But this is basically where he's talking about the added, I believe he says 465 million euro per day that Europe is paying as far as added energy costs because of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, because of obviously this disastrous war undertaken by Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, with obviously nothing in return, right? Nothing to show for it, no hopes of anything in return, just straight more cost, more money out of the pockets of the people in Europe because of something that Donald Trump enacted. So that's what he's speaking about here. Hopefully I got it at the right part.
Euros if I was a government.
Nope, I missed it just by about 3 seconds. All right, here we go.
I went to one of your friends, Claude Friends, type friends, and I said,
yep,
what could I buy for 465 million euros if I was a government? And it said, and it sent me this thing from a German government website that said that the German government estimates that 465 million is the cost required to offer what they call robust tax reductions for corporate zero-emission vehicle purchases. In other words, you could subsidize your entire corporate vehicle fleet in Germany for that cost. So we're talking huge sums of money.
And for no benefit. The point is you're paying 465 million euros a day more, and you're not getting a single bit more energy.
Exactly.
So it's a pure cost. There's no benefit at all.
He went on essentially to say that governments are not really wanting to be that open about the consequences.
Whoa, where'd it go?
Energy costs in Europe have gone up 465 million euros a day. Now, 465 million, I went to one of your friends, Claude Friends, type friends, and I said,
yep,
what could I buy for 465 million euros if I was a government? And it said, and it sent me this thing from a German government website that said that the German government estimates that 465 million is the cost.
Apparently YouTube wanted you to hear that again because the screen went black and then all of a sudden we were about 30 seconds behind where we just left off. So my apologies, but apparently the deep state wanted you we didn't want you to hear that it was costing Europe an extra, 500 million euro a day because of what Donald Trump's done.
A bit more energy.
Exactly.
So it's a pure cost. There's no benefit at all.
He went on essentially to say that governments are not really wanting to be that open about the consequences of this because they're dealing with enough problems as it is. And also, he said that the first thing that will go is jet fuel. Now, that would obviously upset people if their planes for their summer holidays get cancelled or whatever, but that's also a massive impact upon global trade. And then the second thing that would get hit would be diesel, which of course would have a massive impact upon the trucking industry. And, you know, he was talking a time frame that was closer than maybe we think. So I think the thing that I had this sort of twin reaction. On the one hand, sitting in these debates thinking these guys are amazing, it's incredible the stuff that they're doing, this is really exciting. And then precisely because of what Trump and Netanyahu did in relation to Iran, another world, as it were, where these same people are having to face some really, really, really difficult choices. Do you remember there's the guy who was telling us that at the time of the Ukraine invasion, when there was a thought amongst Northern European governments and the Scandis and the Germans or whatever, that Putin might just literally pull the plug on Russian gas. Now, as it happened, he needed the money, so he kept going as long as he could. But where they were actually having cabinet meetings talking about whether, for example, the German economy could survive, whether one of the Northern European...
It just blew me away that, you know, they go through this entire, what looked to be like an energy conference for, you know, sustainable energy, renewable energy, electricity and stuff like that. And what they came out of it thinking and remembering was, you know, these little sit downs that they had in between the, you know, the main events and their speaking engagements of people being like, well, this is how close we are to like real economic disaster worldwide. Right? Like you think we may be months and months away from this or years away. Like we're not. It's a lot closer than anyone really realizes, and most states and countries allowing themselves to kind of tell their citizenry. But, you know, it's getting really close to getting on that red line and us going straight over that cliff as far as diesel, fertilizer, jet fuel. I mean, does it really, you don't really need to talk about it or think about how much, a shortage in jet fuel will go to have affect global trade, global shipping. Right, what it's going to do to, you know, airline tickets, you know, the cost of airline tickets, all of that. And then it filters down to diesel, obviously how you know, trucks and ships and stuff and people that go out fishermen got to figure out and utilize diesel. So, you know, it doesn't take a genius to look at how much is going to be affected if in fact we do see ourselves going over that edge, right?
Governments literally having a meeting about whether they would have to send in troops into factories to say we have to shut down the power because we're having to ration energy. So it was a pretty apocalyptic is the wrong word, but what was your sense of it? I mean, I left that quite alarmed.
Yeah, very alarming, very, very alarming. Number one, it takes us back to a world that we thought was a long way away. I mean, if you go back to the stories of the First World War, a lot of that was about Germany and Britain being concerned about where they were going to get the oil to power their navies.
Yeah.
And actually, a lot of the Second World War was about the Germans advancing to try to seize oil fields. That's why we're going to talk, I think, a little bit about the Caucasus, but that's why the Caucasus really mattered to Hitler. And of course, in the 1970s, there's actually quite an interesting book being written by somebody called Philip Delves Broughton about this. The war in the Middle East, which was the invasion of Israel, the Yom Kippur War, led to an oil embargo, which then sparked a global crisis. Now, because of the world we've been in since the 80s, the world of globalization, we've created a more and more interconnected world, and we've become more and more reliant on other people, and more tending to assume, if you're Europe, that you've entered a new universe, right? You might think, for example, you don't need to worry so much about oil and gas because you've got so much renewables. Now, the problem with that is, of course, that even with a lot of renewables, most countries need gas to back up the wind turbine.
It is. I mean, it's crazy to think about, you know, what took place during the 70s and how we kind of thought we were out of that situation, and something like that probably couldn't take place. Obviously, if you think about the worst of the worst, and big wars starting in the Middle East, obviously that starts to creep in more and more. But you know, we start to now look back at the time where, you know, I mean, the Yom Kippur War there, you know, what was taking place in the 70s. It's crazy to look at, you know, what we're comparing this moment to, and the economic ramifications, the oil shortages, you know, the economic trade that's been put on hold, and how bad it's affecting every aspect of daily life for, you know, even the blue collar workers of all of these countries right now. But, you know, like I said, I found it I found it pretty alarming how alarmed they were after talking to, very intelligent people. I'm sure that knew a lot about energy, knew a lot about, natural resources, and knew about renewable energy, but also what it meant to have the Strait of Hormuz continuously closed for months and months and months, if not years. I mean, we still don't know. I mean, missiles and drones are being shot tonight. We don't know when that strait's going to be opened. And in fact, like I said, if we're going to add in the Bab al-Mandeb Strait, then, it's going to get even worse way before it gets better. But I just, like I said, thought it was rather alarming how alarmed they were at what they were being told as far as a time frame. Everybody thinks everybody likes to think we're sitting on this big stockpile of oil or stockpile of diesel or stockpile of fertilizer, and we're just kind of insulated from all of this. But that's not the reality of what's taking place. And, this still has the potential, like I said, to get a lot worse before it gets better. But all right, let me throw this one on. See if we can call out this lady's bullshit, because I knew she was going to have some. It's her first podcast back since what she's calling a family vacation inside of Russia. Yeah, I'm talking about Candace Owens. I don't know what her Russian nickname. I think she actually gives herself a Russian nickname in this podcast, if I'm not mistaken. I watched about the first minute or two. So I figured we'd do our due diligence here at calling out whatever Russian propaganda she's surely going to throw out in this. I'm sure she's probably going to talk about how clean the streets were and how awesome the churches were. And, oh my God, Tucker Carlson was right and the CIA lied to us. And shut up, bitch. Okay. We'll see what else we can call out. And then we got some updates coming from the front lines, both from the Sun with some battle plans. We got some updates from Preston Stewart talking about a flamingo strike about 1,000 kilometers inside of Russia, which is definitely good to see. So we'll talk about that coming up after this. All right. So let's see if we can call out the Russian propaganda coming from, Kremlin Candace, I guess, something like that. Well, let's see what nickname she gives herself here.
All right, you guys, or should I say happy Tuesday, comrades. I now wish to be...
Get it? Comrades, Russia, because everybody saw that she was in Russia and was calling her out for her bullshit. Now she's going to say comrades. Get it? That's what she meant by that, in case that slipped by you. It's comrades now.
Called Kandastovia Moskowins. I think going forward, that makes sense. You guys can say hello to my new little babushka. She's so cute. Because this is like a thing now, I think, right? Isn't it? Whenever I go away, the internet just sort of loses its collective mind. They wait for me to...
Yeah, because she just went away, guys. She went to just like some random place. I don't know why everybody's making a big deal of it. I mean, it's not like she went to Hawaii or, Florida, St. Lucia. You know what I mean? It's not like she took her family away. She went to fucking St. Petersburg, right? Not typically a place you'd be like, all right, let's bring the family to. You know that country right now that's engaged in a full-scale war against one of the allies of the United States who gave up nuclear weapons because the United States said that they would be there to protect them if, in fact, the Russians did exactly what they're doing right now. Why don't we go there, right? The country that the United States and, our CIA and State Department say Americans probably shouldn't visit unless you're, buddy with the Kremlin, unless you're probably not going to be kidnapped or held for ransom or held so that they could release somebody else from Ukrainian captivity or from United States captivity.
And everybody just starts
whatever it may be. But just, you just pop over to St. Pete, obviously, on a little family vacay. It had nothing to do with the Russian Davos or trying to do propaganda for the Kremlin at a time where they desperately need people on their side. But I'm sure she goes on with a little bit of more of this.
All these fairy tales. It was insanity. Larry Loomer tagging the United States Treasury, people saying that I needed to be investigated for putting my children in harm's way. Glenn Beck seeing Alexander Dugins on the wall. Ben Shapiro.
That's crazy. Like I said, people, she didn't honestly put her family in harm's way. She didn't put her children in harm's way, because when you're on when you're on Russian soil on behalf of the Kremlin, you feel a lot safer. Right, you're guaranteed that safety in some way, shape, or form. Not to, I'm sure, the full extent, but you know what I mean. If they're inviting you there, if they want to see your face at this Russian Davos with Andrew Tate, there's a reason why they'd want to keep you safe. So that's why she feels this overwhelming comfort that she had, and how ridiculous it is for people to say that I put my children in danger. Right? She knew she had the firsthand accounts from people that in high places, let's just say, that she was going to be A-okay.
Oh, of course, back upon the midget horse. It was absolute
Did
cinema.
she say Ben Shapiro back upon the midget horse? What'd she say?
Arm's way. Glenn Beck seeing Alexander Dugans on the wall. Ben Shapiro, of course, back upon the midget horse. It was absolute cinema. Well, welcome back to Candace.
Shut up.
All right, you guys, I have to confess, I was being Russian tricky. I was being a little bit tricky. The photo on our thumbnail is AI. President Putin is not, in fact, in studio today. I am sorry. I am trying to make it happen, though. Okay, so we can hope for the future. But who knew? Who knew? Nobody told me.
Imagine being like high enough on the list of a Russian stooge to make your way into St. Pete at a time, like I said, where Russia's engaged in a full-scale war of with the United States ally, and feel just like total comfort, but also being such a dickhead and being, because you're obviously, I'm going to assume, a black woman, Vladimir Putin still won't accept your invite, your request for an interview. Like she says, she's requested a few times now to have a sit down with Vladimir Putin, and each time she's gotten denied. So she's useful enough to go and take pictures in St. Pete at this Russian Davos, but definitely not high enough on the list, and definitely too black and too female for Vladimir Putin to have a sit down conversation with her.
Was required to formally submit an itinerary when I travel on vacation with my family. I had no idea that this became a thing. I didn't know that when I said I am taking my kids to Italy, as an example, a month ago, that I was required to also tell people that I might have dinner with some priests and a cardinal, that I was going to get confirmed.
And again, what war is Italy currently engaged in, right? So what is the comparison that we're making? You honestly don't see the reason as to why people are calling this out, Candace? You just can't for the life of you figure out why people would have, I don't know, maybe a different thing to say if you took your family to fucking Disney World than if you went to St. Petersburg. Like, that's really, it's mind blowing for you, and you can't possibly fathom why people have a problem with this. Come on, what are we doing here? What are we doing? Really?
To the Catholic Church. I thought I was just allowed to do that. Like, I could just go out and not be like, I don't know, an elected official who does have to formally submit their itineraries because they're using tax-paying dollars. I mean, the absolute state of Zionist affairs in media today. She didn't tell you she was going to be speaking on a panel in St. Petersburg while on family vacation. Is everybody okay? Do you know that there had literally...
What? Excuse me. Well, I'm gonna. I mean, I'm the one calling you out here, and I'm certainly no fucking Zionist. I can tell you that much, right? And people aren't calling you out for the fact that you spoke on the panel. It's the fact that, you know, you felt very comfortable in this trip, where you went in the first place, what it represents, the people that you were talking to, the things that they're associated and affiliated with, like obviously the huge fucking disastrous war that the country that you went to is currently engaged in, and the millions of people that are dying and shit. I don't know, just maybe a few of those aspects that make it worth calling your ass out for this. You know,
there's never in the history of all of my family vacations has there been one vacation where I was not also, I don't know, taking a meeting simultaneously, trying to make a business
connection. I mean, Russian war criminals and like murderous psychopaths and shit. It's like it's just one of the things you do when you go to St. Pete. It's like she can't help it. She always takes like meetings and stuff when she's in Florida, Hawaii, Texas. You know, if she's going on vacation in different places, Italy, I'm sure she was meeting with, I don't know, Benito Mussolini. I'm sure she put in a request for Mussolini to have an interview when she went to Italy.
When in Rome, sort of a thing. Did you know that you're allowed to like answer work emails while you're away? You can do that. Nobody cared when I went to Hungary and I met with Viktor Orban. He was the president. Nobody knows.
People did care. People absolutely did care and called you out for that, I assure you.
That I once did a long form interview with a Japanese journalist. I don't think I have ever once gone to London, which is virtually an annual or biannual trip in my household, without taking multiple meetings, doing random interviews.
I'll ask again, what war is the UK currently engaged in, right? Like, what war are they fighting there in London that, again, people would rightly be calling you out for if, again, they were engaged in some very detrimental war against an ally? Like, I'm curious the comparison that you're making when you're when you're in the UK compared to when you're in St. Petersburg. Like, again, this astonishment that people have something else to say. Like, there's two different, states of mind between, an ally of the United States and Russia, who's currently engaged in, like I said, one of the most dangerous and largest wars in Europe since World War II.
For some reason, Russia. No, you
Russia.
can't. We need to know everything. So to walk you guys through what happened, my husband and I planned a family vacation to Russia.
Yeah. It was just we just randomly threw a dot at a map, guys. It had nothing to do with my speaking engagements at this ridiculously fake and phony Russian Davos bullshit. But, it just so happened to coincide with our family vacation to St. Pete that, of course, out of all the other places on the planet, why not go to Russia at this point in time with all the reasons previously stated?
And thought, hey, while we're there, we should try to see if we can get an interview with Vladimir Putin, because that would make sense.
Yeah, it just makes sense. I mean, anytime you go to, a country run by a war criminal, you might as well see if you can get an interview with said war criminal, right? But what happened, Candace? Did he take your invitation?
And so we put in a formal request.
Yeah,
that
and what
request
happened?
was denied, as it is every year. I've actually been trying to interview.
As it is every year, right? When are you going to get the hint? Right? Unless you pull a Michael Jackson, I don't think you're getting an interview with fucking Vladimir Putin anytime soon. Right? He was very quick to take one from Tucker Carlson. See if we can notice any differences, some glaring differences between Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson. I see two right off the bat. Okay.
Vladimir Putin for like 5 years now. I actually put in a request when I was working at the Daily Wire, ironically, to pitched it to the CEOs. I was like, maybe we can make this happen. We're trying to make it happen. And I think, to be honest with you, that Vladimir Putin doesn't know I exist. I'm working on it. Okay. Tucker Carlson stole my shine. Anyway, we were informed that, well, if this is when you're coming, if you extend your trip a little beyond that week that you're intending to go, you could make it to the annual SPIEF conference.
And again, this is just strange that Russia happened to know, apparently just randomly, unless it was posted somewhere by Candace Owens, like Russia just happened to call and say, hey, we heard you're coming to St. Pete. Well, if you and your family want to extend your glorious vacation, then you could speak at this and, this fucking Davos bullshit or this Russian Davos thing. Like, it's just weird to me that Russia would know about that. You know what I mean? Or even if in fact it was posted by Candace Owens, somebody from Russia would reach out to her. I don't know. I just found that strange. Like, she has a direct line of communication, or she's just like blatantly accepting emails, from Russian email addresses and shit. I don't know. How did that work exactly? Like, who did you communicate with to set this up? That's something else that I'd be curious as well. But, she goes on to do the clean streets, I'm sure. I'll just kind of click any random moment here. Oh, no, she does go on. I want to see where all these people call her out, because she plays a little compilation here of different programs and commentators that call her out. So I want to see if I can play that, and we'll dive on after this. But, she's doing the normal Tucker Carlson while it was, the streets were clean. Everybody made me feel safe. The CIA lied to me. You've been lied to your whole life. It's really a beautiful city, when in fact, I don't think any one of those things is what we actually call out as far as what their government is enacting. Their dictatorial ruler, his fucking laws, the things that he's been doing, engaged in as far as, this big war that he's been undertaking. You know what I mean? Jesus.
Great. And the rest is just sort of clinical neuroses, I guess. Take a listen.
Here we go.
So the latest is Putin himself has just asked Candace Owens to speak today at this convention. So she's just gotten bumped up another level, and she's thrilled about it.
Candace Owens went to Russia to just do propaganda work on behalf of the Russian regime. She wasn't in St. Petersburg because she wanted to see the churches or anything like that. She was there because she was attending and speaking at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. Alongside,
what's fucked up is, like, a person like Candace Owens could possibly get me to agree with Ben Shapiro, right? That just makes me sick. I don't know if I'm going to be able to sleep tonight, but he's right. You know what I mean? She wasn't there to go see the churches. She wasn't there to go fucking sweep the streets and to go say prayers at these, at the whatever she was doing. No, none of that. She was there blatantly to do Russian propaganda and try to, make it seem, less like we have something to be mad at them about, right? Make it seem like, just to normalize relations between the United States, people that watch her show, and Russia, much like, why Andrew Tate and his disgusting brother showed up as well, and the rest of these psychopaths. But Ben Shapiro, unfortunately, got to say, right in at least this 7-second clip that he's got here.
Vladimir Putin and Alexander Dugin, and other members of the Russian government and the intel community.
And you've had all these woke Rikers that have been going to, for some reason, they've decided to go vacation in Russia.
Yeah.
But you know how difficult it is to get into Russia? Like, you don't get into Russia.
And these are all right wingers so far, right? I haven't seen a liberal or a lefty yet. So it was Glenn Beck, Ben Shapiro, Dana Lausch, right?
Unless Russia invites you. She's getting a free trip to Russia. She's getting a free ride to Russia. I'm sure they're paying her a speaker fee. And she's speaking at the same event as Dugin and all of these other commie.
She laughs like a fucking maniac too, Candace, at this moment in time. I know you're thinking to yourself, Brian, there's two maniacs on the screen. I'm talking about the one on the left.
Absolute jackwagons.
If you don't understand what is going on here, when Candace goes to Russia and is a guest of the state at this economic forum, is attending these different TV hits with RT, and she's talking about how surprised she is that it's a beautiful country and that the CIA must have lied to her all of these years about what Russia is like.
Ridiculous
if you fall for this, you are the mark for this kind of propaganda.
He's 1,000% right. I don't know what she's giggling about, right? I don't know what the fuck she's laughing about. She's got to make it seem like these people are off their rocker and, oh my God, they're ridiculously calling me out from it. He's 100% right. The guy, I don't know who he is, right? Don't know him from a fucking piss hole in the snow, but I know that he's right about what he just said. If you believe any of the bullshit about clean streets and, oh, look at the Russian bread like Tucker Carlson and, oh, it's so nice. They got churches and shit. Like, you are the mark. You are the fucking moron. So I don't know what she's laughing at and giggling at, but, you know, she's playing people basically clowning on her correctly.
This is genuinely mental unwellness. I really do believe.
No. See, the mental unwellness comes from either pretending you don't know why they're saying what they're saying, or actually not knowing why they're saying what they're saying. That's where the real mental illness comes in. And it's like, you know, Trump derangement syndrome. When they say that we have Trump derangement syndrome, it's like, no, we're accurately and rightly calling out the pedophile president for all of his lies, all of his fucking crimes, his felonies, January 6th, the whole list and litany of things that we could call him out for. The real derangement comes into play where people that would vote for somebody like that, people that defend people like that, the billionaire Epstein class, people associated with this administration, you'd have to be fucking deranged to defend a pedophile, right? You'd have to be deranged to defend somebody that's in the Epstein files more than fucking Jeffrey Epstein himself, who's in the Epstein files more than Jesus is named in the fucking Bible. Like, that takes a true deranged individual to continue, especially in 2026. Like, this is when the TDS, the real TDS, this is when it starts really showing its fucking ugly face. Like I said, the people left around Donald Trump at the end of this fucking whole experiment are going to be the most sycophantic, the most ridiculous of people, the most likely to be defending and obfuscating for the most obvious of things that Donald Trump is responsible for. The people, again, that were associated and affiliated with Hitler, in the bunker in his last days. The people that couldn't see a future without Hitler, couldn't see a future without National Socialism. Well, these are the people that are going to be surrounding Donald Trump. The people that can't see a future without Donald Trump, can't see in America without the MAGA movement, and they're going to do anything they possibly can to put the blinders on and continue that Trump derangement syndrome and continue voting for pedophiles and defending the people robbing us blind, lying to us, getting us involved in very destabilizing, very fucking unconstitutional, illegal wars that are responsible for you and I paying exorbitant prices at the gas pump, at the grocery store, for energy prices, all of those things. That's what takes a fucking true deranged individual. So like I said, it's going to become more and more apparent who these people are. But let me see. I'll throw this one on the screen as well, because I tried to play a few seconds of this earlier, but since we're going into the Ukraine coverage, this is from the news agents, and this is just kind of a recap and quick short here about Donald Trump realizing that he's being kind of bitch slapped around by Putin, they're talking about in this clip. But I mean, he could also talk about how he's getting bitch slapped around by Iran in the Iran conflict, the Iran war as well. So I believe this is Louis Goodall given his accounting of, and it says, is Trump finally waking up to Putin's game? So I just figured we'll play this short just before we get into some frontline accountings of what's taking place in Ukraine and also deep inside of Russia. So appreciate you guys. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. My name is Brian. This is Blunt Politics. And just real quick about Trump. getting one over on, Putin getting one over on Trump. No sound on it? Get out of here. Why would that happen? Oh, you know why? Because I'm probably not playing it on the screen. What an absolute fucking twat bag I am. I'm sorry. I was so excited to get into making fun of. I was so. Hold on. Now I gotta find it again. Good grief. Good grief. All right, let me take this off the screen. Let me take this off. My apologies. Thank you, Tiff. Sorry. My apologies. Now I gotta find it again. I don't know where it went. God damn it. All right, shut up, you. Now there's a video playing. All right, let me go back to the history. I got to find it again. Sorry, I was so excited to hear them talk shit about Donald Trump. I totally forgot to put it on the screen. Let me see if it's one of the last things that I saw. Shorts. Come on, give me a second here. Let me find it. Oh, here it is. All right. I found it. My apologies. But again, I was so excited about getting it on the screen. Thank you, Tiff. My apologies. All right, so not that one, this one. Sorry to make you stare at Candace Owens this long, but again, this is only just a couple seconds of this as well. It's basically just our allies outside of this country recognizing that Vladimir Putin has continuously and consistently gets one over on Donald Trump, and basically Trump is the last one to recognize this. So I just thought this was a quick shot that I saw them take at it, so I figured it'd be worth playing. So my apologies. Sorry to keep you waiting on this clip, but it happens. What are you gonna do? It's late.
Waking up to what the rest of the world already knew, right? Which is Putin's been playing him. Putin's been taking the piss out of it.
Isn't it lovely that he's sort of the last person to get it?
Yeah, and I suppose, look, I mean, if you're being generous and charitable, you could say, look, actually there is, and take a slightly longer view, there is quite a long history, probably poor history, but a long history of incoming US presidents who try and reset relations.
So they say literally right there, isn't it hilarious that Donald Trump seems to be the last to know, right? It seems to be the last person to recognize, right?
Waking up to what the rest of the world already knew, right? Which is Putin's been playing him.
Putin's been playing
taking the piss out of him.
Isn't it lovely that he's sort of the last person to get it?
Yeah, and
they're literally recognizing, and I think they're even giving Donald Trump too much credit here, right? Because at the beginning of this, he says he thinks Donald Trump's waking up to the fact that Vladimir Putin's been taking the piss out of him, or again, making fun of him, knowing that he can manipulate him, using him, like we've been talking about on the show. But I still don't think that's a recognition that Donald Trump has come to at this point. He still thinks he's like the strong, tough guy in that situation. He still thinks, Vladimir Putin would listen to him, anything that he says. Like, he still doesn't recognize how much he's being used and abused by these different strongmen, whether it's Xi Jinping, whether it's Vladimir Putin. I mean, you name it at this point, and they've just kind of gotten one over on him every single turn. But I found that to be, and I won't dive into too much more of that after I screwed that one up to begin with. But like I said, they go on and just recognize how deeply obvious it is that Vladimir Putin is manipulating Donald Trump, and Donald Trump isn't smart enough to recognize that. So I think something that you and I have recognized over the course of his political endeavors. I don't think it takes too much, but like I said, I appreciate you guys sticking with me and my bullshit. But all right, let me throw this one on here, and I'll make sure to put on the sound this time for you guys. This is from from Denis Davidoff, and it's just giving us an update from Ukraine. Big important Russian general kaboomed. So this is giving us more insight. This is what we didn't get to earlier on in the early show. So this is going to give us an identity of that Russian general that was taken out, that went das vidanya, as they say, and then a little bit more about, I think, how his son kind of may have given up a little bit too much information. So let's see what other details are coming out as far as that Russian general killed, and then we'll dive into this Battle Plans Exposed update. And then to get you out of here, we got this Preston Stewart video detailing the Ukrainian strike using their new Flamingo missile that was about 1,000 kilometers inside of Russia. So appreciate you guys. Let's see if we can tackle this one together. Again, a little bit of updates about that Russian general that was taken out, let's just say.
Hello, my friends. Some interesting news. We have -1 more Russian general. His name was Damir Davidov. Yeah, Davidov, a classical Russian surname. Don't look at me like that. No. Well, anyways, he was responsible for the Russian supplies, for the supplies of the munition to the Russian army. Remember this classical Shoigu Gerasimov, where is munition? Well, probably Damir Davidov.
So again, taking that information into account, and I haven't seen yet anybody take accountability for this, say that they were responsible for this. But if you look at what he was responsible for, what he was tasked with as far as resupply to the front, supplies in general, it would kind of fit in with, the recent attacks from the Ukrainian sides of them going after the resupply to the front. Obviously, these different highways, the land bridge going into Crimea, we've seen them again and again try to make it more difficult for the Russians to resupply. So again, I wouldn't be surprised if this was, another calculated and justifiable military target here, but I just haven't had any confirmation as of yet. So, just speculation on my part, just based off of what we know from this Russian general and what his job was.
Knew the answer to that question. And you may wonder, where was he cancelled? Maybe he is a brave Russian general who supported his soldiers somewhere close to the front lines, coordinating efforts of the Russian logistics by the time Ukraine hit them very, very hard. No, he actually lost his life in the most dangerous city for the Russian generals. The capital city of Russia, Moscow, yes. And here is his BMW. This is X3 from what I see, and it was kaboomed on the way. There was the special device mounted just under the driver's seat, and General himself was driving.
So again, a special device underneath the driver's seat was actually detonated remotely. People that were watching, witnesses say that, the vehicle was already in motion. I don't know if that was to kind of eliminate the possibility of civilian casualties, wait until he got, out of a certain area or away from a group of people or whatnot. But we showed the video yesterday on the show, and it cuts off just before I think a bystander comes and actually pulls the general out of the driver's seat. But it was reported that he did lose his life on the scene. And I'm not sure if they detail on this one, but there were a Telegram post by the general's son. I'm not sure if he goes into this, Dennis goes into this, but there was Telegram post by the general's son in his vehicle, like in his, in his official vehicle with the registration tags, with the license plate open. So I don't know if that, was enough information to kind of not only geolocate where the picture was taken, but also get the information of what vehicle he drove, so it could be more easily targeted to that effect. But, you can see some of the devastation in the aftermath here of his BMW, if I'm not mistaken, just kind of fully engulfed
cars. So no paid driver was hired, and we have more confirmation that the general definitely was responsible for the supplies of artillery shells and rocket artillery munition. So kind of the unique.
So he was responsible for the resupply of artillery shells and rocket supply ammunition, as he just said. So again, somebody again that you'd be seeking. Again, if you're looking to make it more difficult for the resupply to happen, if you're looking to cause more chaos both behind the lines and also as you get closer to the front lines, whether it's taking out vehicles, resupply trucks, oil trucks, and stuff like that. Obviously, one's carrying ammunition, soldiers, obviously, this is obviously going to add to the chaos. They're now going to have somebody take over that spot, learn what was going on. Obviously, probably won't have the same training, but, they're probably going to end up the same way.
Niche for the Russian army, nevertheless, very important. And so far, we are out of clue whether it was the internal confrontation within the Russian defense ministry, or maybe it was Ukrainian trace. Yeah, of course, Russian officials, they would say that it's Ukrainian SBU, military intelligence, something else. Well, before Ukrainian intelligence already took responsibility of canceling some of the Russian generals in Moscow, maybe it will happen also this time. We'll need to monitor the official statements of Ukrainian.
So even as he's making this video, let's see when this video is put out, it says June 9th. So yesterday, so at the time he was making this, and like I said, I haven't seen any further confirmation to detail anybody taking responsibility for this, but it kind of makes sense both ways. It makes sense either way. We've seen Russia take out their own time and time again. And also, if you look at what the general, his assignments were, it wouldn't be far-fetched or, you know, kind of beyond the realm of possibility to think that the Ukrainians might have had some involvement. But like he said, they typically are more than willing to announce when they had involvement. And like I said, I haven't seen that as of yet, but maybe that's something that we'll get in the future here.
Officials, yeah, military first of all. And here we have pictures from the different perspective. Firefighters were called, but it was too late. Yeah, Ukraine put the heating device for the cabin of the car, special device that makes the car a little bit more warm. Allegedly, Ukraine. So far, as I told you, we don't know. And guys, I don't have any sort of the sorrow about that guy because he is the Russian general. He works for the Russian war crime machine, and they're destroying Ukrainian cities, Ukrainian towns, Ukrainian villages, Ukrainians themselves, households, absolutely everything. They use aviation gliding bombs and rocket artillery. Just for you to understand, in Kherson, rocket artillery was fired to the playground the last week. And the image that I saw there, how family was unalived and a small girl, she got terribly wounded and her eye went out. Sadly, the video that I watched was without any sort of the blur. And guys,
Sorry, I'm trying to look up in the background if I can find out that Telegram post, if I can see that Telegram post anywhere where that Russian general's son may have given that information out. Let me see here. No, that's from the actual, that's from the strike itself. Sorry, I'm just looking behind the scenes real quick to see if I can pull up a picture of that Telegram post. Let me see. Russian general's son, Telegram. Maybe this will bring it up. Give me a sec. Nope, not that one. Not that one. Not that one. I'll give it one. Oh, here it is right here. Here it is right here. Let me share this tab instead. So this is the post that people were talking about. This is the general that died in Moscow today had a son who was willing to show Ukraine the license plates of his car, which is, again, another reason you can see the license plate clearly visible. Looks like the same BMW. You can see the BMW decal. You can see the BMW tag on the front there. So it looks like to be the same SUV that was, you know, his father was using. And it says the conspiratorial car of Lieutenant General Davidov was exposed by his son on social media. Thus, the number U028ER750 became known to the public. Let's remember this, right? So that's another one people were speculating as, you know, the ease in which he probably could have been targeted because of posts like this, because his son had let everybody know, hey, here's my dad's official vehicle. Here's my dad's official vehicle's fucking registration. Here's kind of the ability. I mean, obviously, it wouldn't take much to geolocate this picture. If you're Ukrainian intelligence, you could take the towers in the background. You could probably get a pretty good idea and understanding of where this was taken. So obviously, that gives you information too. I mean, any intel, any information you give an intelligence officer is probably not going to do it's not going to do good for you. You know what I mean? So you definitely don't want to put out the registration number of your Russian general father, as you know, they're engaged in a very high profile war and that he's likely to be somebody targeted by the enemy. So kind of a stupid move as far as that's concerned. But let's see if we can dive onto this Battle Plans Exposed video here, see if there's any updates. I believe this is focusing more on Crimea. And then this next one, like I said, from Preston Stewart, talking about the Flamingo strike inside of Russia. So let's see if we can just catch up on a few minutes of this as well. Again, like I said, the Battle Plans Exposed. This is Ukraine captures 600 kilometers of territory as Putin's home city burns. So always good to see, always good to hear. Let's go.
He wants it. It's his jewel in the crown. It's the one thing that Putin wants to keep more than anything. But his land bridge is not safe anymore. Russia's experiencing a devastating 8-to-1 kill ratio. The armed forces of Ukraine now have up to 70 drones available for every single Russian soldier on the front line. Putin's air supremacy is officially on borrowed time.
Good. Oh, come on now.
As Ukraine spoils Putin's party in his home city of St. Petersburg and the logistics lockdown begins to bite, there are critical updates from the front lines. I'm Philip Ingram, and this is Battle Plans Exposed.
Hey,
On
Philip.
the battlefield, reports show an absolute explosion in Ukrainian drone superiority, forcing a staggering 8-to-1 kill ratio against the occupiers. Prominent Russian military bloggers admit that Zelensky's army has...
And that's something we've long talked about needed to happen, right? Is dark and grisly as it is to speak about, but that, you know, the kill ratio between obviously Ukrainians lost on the battlefield and Russians lost on the battlefield was something that even the Ukrainian military experts and Ukrainian military themselves said that they needed to kind of, you know, make sure that that was a lot higher, right? A lot more Russians taken out as opposed to the amount of Ukrainians taken out. So these drones, not only the new technology, but also the amount of drones they've been able to pull up is kind of making it more possible to see those big discrepancies between the kill ratios on the side of the Russians and obviously on the side of the Ukrainians. But obviously this talking about the attacks on the resupply of Crimea as well.
Up to 70 drones for every single Russian soldier on the front line. On top of this, there has been a massive uptick in vehicle kills by Zelensky's army. They're smashing their records on a daily and monthly basis, thanks to their successful drone and middle strike campaign. 542 Russian vehicles were destroyed in one day. In May,
insane. 542 vehicles in one day. Right. And I don't know if that's a record. I'm probably assuming that it's not. Right. But I mean, just think about that. Right. Sit there and count to 542 and just apply that to vehicle after vehicle after vehicle. We're talking about resupplies. We're talking about fuel trucks, ammunition, all of these things, carrying troops themselves, truck after truck after truck, vehicle after vehicle. Like that is an insane amount of vehicles to lose in a single 24-hour period. Right. And if you, if you continue that on for months, weeks, months, and years, I mean, it goes to show you just how much is lost in the amount of money spent on the vehicles just on that. And then you add in tanks, planes, helicopters, obviously the amount of troops that they've lost. And you can see just how damaging this war is for Russia.
1,704 vehicles were taken offline.
Stop it.
That's 256 every 24 hours. Tanks, armored personnel carriers, fuel trucks, expensive anti-air systems, all the essentials needed to keep the war going, and they're now ending up on the scrap heap. That brings the tally to over 100,700 since the invasion began. But it's not just the long-range strikes that are strangling Putin's war machine. There's exciting weapons updates that could have serious impact on the air war. We'll also look at where these Ukrainian attacks are leading and ask the question, can Ukraine go on the offensive? Before we get into all of that, let's begin by looking at
I would argue they've been on the offensive, right? I mean, maybe if it's not the, the broad sweeping offensives that we think about during, World War II and stuff like that. But I mean, the offensive, when we're talking about strikes 1,000 kilometers inside of Russia, when we're talking about ports like, Ust-Lubinsk and different ports all over the place being struck, if we're talking about, the Kremlin having to ask the Ukrainians for permission to have their little fucking Victory Day parade because the Ukrainians have the ability to hit inside Moscow. When we're talking about, Vladimir Putin and his Russian Davos looking at thick black smoke over the fucking skyline of St. Petersburg because of a Ukrainian attack, I don't know. I think that's a pretty clear indication that the Ukrainians are consistently on the offensive, right? I know they call it their kinetic sanction activity, going after the oil infrastructure and stuff, but these are offensive acts by definition.
what's been happening on the front lines. What you're seeing here is a strike on Project 20380 Steregushny class corvette. The Boyki, this $120 million guided missile warship, is one of the most capable surface combatants Russia has got in the Baltic. Just last year, this vessel was guarding Putin's shadow fleet of oil tankers passing through the English Channel.
Looks like they got it in dry dock.
Ukraine flew attack drones, dodged Russian air defenses to strike the Boyki whilst it sat helpless in a dry dock.
Yep.
Moscow promised that the security around St. Petersburg had been heavily tightened because Putin is hosting his glitzy international economic forum there. Instead, Putin is preparing a keynote speech on Russian stability whilst his home city burns in the background. to allow a swarm of attack drones to penetrate 700 miles into Russian airspace and strike a heavily defended naval base during a high-profile presidential event shows huge gaps in the radar coverage and their surface-to-air networks.
Right, and we talked about on the show the multiple angles of propaganda victories and obviously military victories that came from these strikes, both with the high-profile people on the Russian side that were attending, obviously the amount of media coverage, Vladimir Putin looking at the fucking thick black smoke, again, as all these people were showing up to what he wanted to go smoothly, little Davos thing that he had going on.
But it's also because those Ukrainian drones are flying well below the range of Russian radar systems. They're allegedly spotted skimming just meters above the Gulf of Finland on their way to the target. The Baltic Fleet is no longer safe in its home port. Expect Ukraine to press home this advantage. No, this isn't the next Mad Max movie. Russian forces took a standard cargo truck, cut the roof off completely, and attached a trailer.
I was just saying, what the fuck was that? What is that little Russian doohickey that going on there? Looks like one vehicle towing another vehicle. That looks like a fucking World War I tank or something like that. What the hell is going on there?
Russian forces took a standard cargo truck, cut the roof off completely, and attached a trailer. The goal, to turn this bizarre creation into an improvised pontoon vehicle for river crossing operations. But Ukraine's Vodkovnavny unit spotted the rig as it was
Look at that fucking thing, will you please? What the fuck? They were going to turn that into a pontoon boat? Jesus, are they getting desperate?
Moved forward towards the front line, working together with adjacent artillery teams.
It's totally and completely open. There's no cage on it. There's no protection for the people driving it whatsoever. They're getting blasted by either mines or drones, it looks like.
They tracked it down to the water's edge before the Russians could even put their makeshift bridge to use.
Oh, yep, disconnected, ran over a tree.
Strikes blew it to
Going
pieces.
good. Another drone or mine.
Crossing a river is one of the most dangerous and complex operations an army can face. It requires specialist engineering vehicles, heavy armored bridging units, and a tight anti-drone and anti-air cover. This shows just how desperate the invaders are for proper engineering equipment, how poorly trained they are, and how tightly Ukraine is watching every single move they make. But it also shows something we've seen across the front line in many different areas, innovation being used in a Mad Max.
What is that shit? Look at that fucking rusted heap of metal that the fucking Russians are trying to use. Looks like, I don't know, those tractor axles, right? It doesn't look like those are tractor tires. Doesn't even look like they're actual like tractor trailer tires. Like, I don't know. Looks like that's some fucking Russian homemade bullshit. I assure you.
Trying to provide something that will do the job whenever their own logistics systems can't provide the properly designed military equipment to do it. There's ingenuity here, but the ingenuity just didn't work. What you're seeing here is the latest test launch for the FP7, a brand new ground-launched anti-tactical ballistic missile. So it's a rival for the Patriot, designed and built by Farpoint.
Well, that's probably a good time for us to jump into this one, talking about the capabilities of the Ukrainians here. We'll kind of finish it off on this one, and I might be able to get you guys out of here a little bit early this evening because this is talking about Ukraine unleashing their new Flamingo missile. We've talked about the Flamingo before, but this was another 1,000-kilometer strike inside of Russia. It goes on to talk about the damage that the Flamingo can do. I think it's got a range of something like 3,000 kilometers and a warhead on it, a little over 1,000 pounds. And I think he does a pretty apt comparison between the Flamingo and the Tomahawk. I think the Tomahawk has about a 300-pound warhead. So a very substantial bang, that is attributed with these Flamingos. But, we'll see if Preston Stewart can give us any more detail into the success of the Ukrainian strike and a little bit more information about the Flamingo missile itself. So let me throw this on the screen. I appreciate you guys. Hit that like button. Slava Ukraini. And again, before we dive into that, why don't we say we thank some people here once again. Unfortunately, somebody did make another contribution, so we're no longer at 69 donations. So thanks to whoever ruined that one. Obviously, I'm kidding. Thank you so much to whoever's responsible for that latest donation. But we're now at 9,298 euro raised, 45% of the way there, 5% of the way from being halfway done already. So again, another big round of applause, another big thank you to you guys who are stepping up, putting your money where your mouth is for the Boston Bryan Summer of Drones campaign in our help to get the 3rd Operational Battalion Artillery Platoon their NAFO 3.0 truck. So again, I was only kidding. Thank you so much to whoever donated that last donation and all of the donations that have gotten us to this point. So huge thank you to you guys. Thank you so much for your generosity. And like I said, putting your money where your mouth is and stepping up for these different campaigns that, we're blessed and very privileged to be associated with. So again, let's dive into this Preston Stewart video about the Ukrainian strike about 1,000 kilometers inside of Russia, which is another sign to Russia that the war's getting closer and closer to their front doorstep, and that Russians should be very worried about the military's ability or lack of ability to protect them. The space in their area is so big, they just don't have the air defenses, the air defense capabilities to make sure that they all stay safe. And the Ukrainians night after night are proving that even the most heavily defended, or what they speculate or say are the most heavily defended areas inside of Russia, still can't defend against these drone attacks from Ukraine. So let's see if we can dive into this one real quick. Slava Ukraine, I appreciate you guys. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 25,000 subscribers, and it's only with your help that we're going to get there. All right, appreciate you.
So overnight, a flamingo visited Russia. Not the pink bird kind, but the missile kind. The FP5, Ukraine's new domestically manufactured cruise missile. And the fact that it made it to a target more than 1,000 kilometers away.
I mean, look at that, dude. You can tell just right there how big of if that's the associated boom.
And the fact that it made it to a target more than 1,000.
Right there. So if that's the destruction that comes from one of these flamingos, I mean, it gives you a pretty clear example of what 1,000 or 1,100 pound warhead will do. And a lot of this is just kinetic mass, as well as the warhead on top of it that causes this destruction. So you can see how substantial these will be if the Ukrainians can not only send more of these up, but also see more efficacy on strikes just like this. The damage that it will do not only to the sites that it hits, but also the psyche of the Russian people and the psyche of the military.
Kilometers away during daylight hours led some in Russia to ask, if we can't stop this thing, what chance do we stand against all of NATO? Love to see it. Now, diving into what we know, Ukrainian President Zelensky issued a statement earlier today saying, quote, "We continue to apply Ukrainian long-range sanctions against Russian military facilities in the oil industry. Specifically this night, Ukrainian FP5 Flamingo missiles hit a military plant in Cheboksary, which supplies the occupiers' army with components for drones."
Now, he said missiles. So I will leave it. I'll leave it open to the option or to the fact that it could have been multiple flamingos that hit this. But obviously, the substantial damage you can see being done here is it doesn't have to doesn't need any more explanation.
And missiles, specifically electronic warfare modules for their long-range munitions. Military informant, a Russian war correspondent, said, quote, "It is impossible to overestimate the need for effective air defense at this plant, as it produces jam-resistant modules of the Comet
Like I said, these are the Russians talking about this. You know what I mean? These are the Russians calling for the necessity to protect these plants, to protect the oil installations, the refineries, wondering why the hell the Russian military doesn't have the capabilities to do so. So it says down the bottom that you can see there highlighted, it says, "It's impossible to overestimate the need for effective air defense in the VI2R Progress plant, as it produces jam-resistant modules of the Comet series, which are installed on reconnaissance UAVs, kamikaze drones, and gliding bombs and missiles." So you would think, right, that if you were given kind of like a grading, like if these installations and how important they were to the war effort, much like you saw in World War II, different plants, different factories, different things associated with different aspects of the war were given kind of higher priority, whether it was given the proper funding or kind of getting to get hidden behind the radar a little bit. Well, those things you would think would have the most protection around them. So these Russian mill bloggers are like, well, if these are going to produce these different chips going on our kamikaze drones, like you would think these would be someplace that would be very well protected. It would have air defenses in place to make sure that it couldn't get hit. And obviously, if the Ukrainians and their flamingos are having this much success getting through, like what chance would we have against fucking NATO if we do get into an expanded war like this? Would stand no chance.
Which are installed on reconnaissance UAVs, kamikaze strike drones, and glide bombs and missiles. So again, these are electronic warfare modules that prevent Russian long-range munitions from being jammed by Ukrainian electronic warfare. Kind of important. And we've got Russian sources talking about we need added air defense in that location. Now, to give you an idea of how significant this is, this plant was roughly 1,000 kilometers from
Look at where this fucking plant is, dude. Look at where this is. So you got to go through the Kursk Oblast. You got to go through the Lipetsk Oblast. You got to go through Tambov Oblast, the Republic of Mordovia. You got to go through the Nizhny Novgorod Oblast, all the way into Chuvashia. I mean, for Christ's sakes. I mean, here's Moscow. You can see just at the top of your page. But again, this is from just the nearest point. So I don't know if he's gotten some information as to where the, where the attacks will launch from. But, you can see here just kind of picking the nearest place where it's, nearest to Kursk there. We're talking about 1,000 kilometers. You can see in the corner here where my mouse is, 1,001 kilometers as his ruler has been, is calculated. And this is just kind of a general range. So you can see how substantial this is for the Ukrainians to be able to strike. And it hasn't been very long where the Ukrainians have had this capability, right? Where they've had not only the capability to do this once, but to continuously show the Russians that their medium and long-range missile attacks have the ability to consistently be effective. So this is like another aspect, another turning point in this war where we've seen a ton of them to this point.
It's long range, and I think we're losing sight of that as the war goes on. There was a time not that long ago where this was well outside the range of anything that Ukraine could launch. Even stuff provided by their Western partners were not going to reach 1,000 kilometers inside of Russian territory. That has changed. So right now we're looking at the FP5 Flamingo. Ukraine is on track supposedly to produce quite a few of these month in and month out. The FP5 has a 1,150 kilogram warhead with an estimated 3,000 kilometer range. As a comparison, essentially we're talking about a cruise missile here from Ukraine, although most indications are that it is a bomb with a jet engine and wings attached to it, which makes it pretty heavy and high explosive when it reaches the target. A good comparison here would be the U.S. Tomahawk land attack missile. So we fired a lot of those recently during the opening phases of Operation Epic Fury. The Tomahawk,
which I think has a range of around maybe 1,000, maybe 1,100 or something like that. So I think it's got less range and substantially less as far as a warhead on it. I think it's, like I said, around 300, 350 or so kilograms.
For comparison, has a 310 kilogram warhead and an estimated 2,500 kilometer range. There are a lot of different variations of the Tomahawk. So this is, very touchy in terms of a comparison, but it's kind of like the most well-known Western cruise missile. So 1,150 kilograms versus 310 kilograms for the warhead, 3,000 kilometer range for the FP5 versus on the high end, 2,500 unclassified for the Tomahawk. Now, one thing to stress is my understanding is the guidance systems, the flight controls, all of that is much more advanced in the Tomahawk, and that would not be.
Well, I mean, that would make sense that the United States would have more advanced targeting systems, radar systems, and stuff like that to utilize. But that just, again, I think shows the capabilities that the Ukrainians have had, the ingenuity that the Ukrainians have to not have the amount of technology, not have the advanced technology, but to put together a weapons platform like this that is clearly capable of not only reaching deep inside of Russia, but also evading their air defenses, whatever air defenses they have in place, to make sure that it strikes its target with, again, an 1,150 kilogram warhead, which is a pretty fucking substantial boom once it gets onto its target.
But you're talking about with the Flamingo, a big warhead flying a long way. And last night, what we saw is it is accurate enough and jam resistant enough to strike a target deep inside of Russia. Speaking to this, a couple different Russian sources here. Maxim Klishnikov, a war correspondent, said, quote, huge holes in the Russian air defense system as relatively simple cruise missiles, a small jet aircraft, flew directly from Ukrainian territory, spending at least an hour and a quarter in the air. They did not have low altitude flight mode to avoid terrain obstacles, yet they were not detected, intercepted by fighter jets, or shot down by air defense systems.
And again, this is Russian bloggers, Russian military bloggers calling out the lackluster Russian air defense systems and how ineffective they are. And if we can't stop this, basically, they're saying, like, how do we expect to stop anything, that flies faster, that is more technologically advanced? And especially if we get into a bout with NATO and they start using the NATO weapons, like, what the hell are we going to do then? Because like it says here, huge holes in the Russian air defense system, and this is not coming from the Ukrainian side, as relatively simple cruise missiles, a small jet aircraft, how they're describing the Flamingo, flew directly from Ukrainian territory, spending at least an hour and a quarter in the air, basically saying how the fuck we had all this time to shoot it down. They did not have low altitude flight mode to avoid terrain obstacles, yet they were not detected, intercepted by fighter jets, or shot down by air defense systems. This means without radar in the air, the Russian air defense system is very ineffective. It says in the event of an attack by the U.S. or NATO countries, which could launch hundreds, if not thousands, of cruise missiles like the Tomahawk, Storm Shadow, or the JSSM, we would be unable to repel it and would suffer massive damage, just like Iraq in 1991 or Yugoslavia in 1999. So, like we said, it's becoming more frequent that these, people on the Russian side, people talking about this war, are calling out their deficiencies, let's just say, their inability to take down the drones and missiles put up by the Ukrainian military, something where, again, they were more apt to lie about it or just not recognize it beforehand. Now they're more and more likely to call this out, and have been quite consistently, especially over the last few months or so, where Ukraine has really taken it to the Russians, especially with the drone war and obviously with medium and long-range missile strikes.
Of an attack by the U.S. or NATO countries, which could launch hundreds and thousands of cruise missiles like the Tomahawk, Storm Shadow, or JASSM, we would be unable to repel it and would suffer massive damage. That is kind of what we're seeing. Something to keep back of mind is if this relatively slow, not all that advanced Ukrainian long-range cruise missile is able to fly through 1,000 kilometers of Russian territory, it wasn't that long ago. I mean, even at the start of the war, the Russian air defense was kind of vaunted as like one of the most robust air defense systems in the entire world, if not the most sophisticated and layered air defense network. And we're watching Ukraine fly essentially a minibus through Russian airspace during daylight to strike a sensitive facility.
Well, that just goes to the paper tiger aspect, right? And we'll see if we'll go back to like the Clash report, see if there's anything we could learn as far as the ongoing strikes or retaliations from the Iranian side. But what he's saying there is what we've learned about the Russian military since day one of this full-scale invasion, which is on paper, it looks like they have substantial air defenses. On paper, it looks like they have a very substantial military. On paper, it looks like they have very substantial armor capabilities, Air Force capabilities, missile capabilities, right? All of those things that it looked like on paper that people were worried about before this war started. Right off the bat, it became very apparent that all of that was horse shit, whether it was the old outdated vehicles that were blowing tires because of the fucking tire rot, whether it was the tanks right off the bat that were supposed to have the ERA, which is like that explosive reactive material that, if you're shot at by a shoulder fire rocket, at least makes the detonation happen outside of the vehicle, right outside of the tank. Well, that was filled with just rubber, right? That had absolutely no, armored reactive responsive material whatsoever. It was just, look in the part, but absolutely nothing that was going to help, go towards the safety of the people, the crew inside of that tank. So, and those things, like we talked about the Katyusha rockets that were basically taken out of World War II museums to be sent to the front to be utilized. Like that doesn't go and show a very advanced military that has all of the capabilities and equipment that it needs, when it is, again, pulling fucking 1940s and 50s and 60s vehicles, whether they're, armored personnel carriers, whether they're tanks, whether they're Katyusha rockets, whatever they may be. It's like, well, obviously, clearly this military isn't doing as well as they wanted fucking people to believe if they're having to utilize this type of equipment. Same thing with the air defenses, right? If you look at, the amount of air defenses they stated, if you looked at what they claim to have as far as, air defenses in place around Moscow or St. Pete, you would think they would be substantial, very difficult to penetrate. Well, time and time again, the Ukrainians are demonstrating that not so difficult to penetrate, right? Not what we expected, not what they portrayed on paper to have as far as the air defense capabilities. But like I said, that's been a pretty consistent theme that we found out from the Russian military, that they were a lot stronger on paper. They tried to portray themselves as a lot bigger and stronger military than they actually were. So let's see here. I'm going to dive back into this just before I get you guys out of here. I know we're a little early, but never hurts to give you guys some free time to kind of get your minds right. Let's see if there's anything else here to report. It says CENTCOM forces struck multiple targets in Iran. Military surveillance, communications, and air defense sites were hit by Marine, Air Force, and Navy precision munitions. The Pentagon framed it, said self-defense in response to ongoing Iranian aggression and threats. So it looks like that was kind of the last. What else? Let's see. Who else would kind of report on this as well? Let's see if CENTCOM says anything else. Throw CENTCOM on your screen. Let's see here. This was an hour ago, 2 hours ago. So I think we got all of that as far as that's concerned. Let me see if there's been any further Iran retaliation. Iran strikes. Let's see if we can feed you that. Let's see. 3 hours ago, big blow for Iran. That's inside of Iran. We talked about that report. This is 14 minutes ago. Footage of ballistic missile launches from Zanjan, Iran. So again, looks like to be some retaliation, but that doesn't make sense either because that's during daylight. So that's not lining up to me either because even the United States strikes were supposed to have happened after midnight, after 1 a.m. So that doesn't make sense. So I'm gonna refrain from playing that. Here's 38 minutes ago, new clip from Courage reportedly captures the sound of massive airstrike. I think that's the one that we played earlier on the show, but just in case anybody joined us late, there's some video detailing a little bit of the response, or at least some of the shooting back and forth tonight by the United States and Iran. That. Let's see what this one is. This says U.S. forces have completed a new round of strikes inside of Iran, according to U.S. Central Command. CENTCOM says Marine Corps, Air Force, Navy assets targeted Iranian military surveillance capabilities, communication systems, and air defense sites at the commander and chief's direction. So that was just some launches from the U.S. What's this one? U.S. military is broadcasting footage allegedly showing the launch of missiles towards the Iran. That's the one that they just put out there. See, break-in an IRGC command and control center has just been decimated by U.S. strikes. Again, take it with a grain of salt. I have no idea who Eyal Yacobi is. Pengrad. So, again, take that with a grain of salt. We're just kind of going down the list here, seeing if we can see anything. It says Iranian army helicopters are frantically scrambling over Tehran in a desperate bid to intercept U.S. drones. Earlier tonight, American drones stuck besieged checkpoints across the city in a coordinated assault. Regime defenses are collapsing. Free Iran. So like I said, take it with a grain of salt as to what lunatics are posting these things. This is OSINT technical from an hour ago. Footage from the USS Michael Murphy launching 5 Tomahawk cruise missiles at Iran tonight. So we'll take a look at that real quick. I don't know. Seems to be a little bit of propaganda put out there. 4 hours ago, all U.S. strikes in southern Iran, including air defense systems, radar, drones, and control units. That's from Axios. Iranian jets in the skies over Tehran. What's this one? Do we see this one yet? Not quite sure what we're looking at there. Posted by RT, so obviously it's shit. And that's one we already saw. What's this one? 5 hours ago, Breaking America has launched a large-scale drone against Iran with reports indicating that the extent of the impact caught Tehran off guard. Tensions across the region have now reached a highly critical stage. And again, I'm highly skeptical that that footage right there is from the recent attack. So, again, like I said, it's good to be able to sift through the bullshit here. But yeah, it looks like that's about the extent of what we've seen so far. I'm sure we'll learn more as the night goes on, as more footage is coming in from this. This says ballistic launches from Iran. Let's see what this is real quick. So I think that might be a little clearer footage from what we were just trying to watch. You can see the missile launches in the background there. What appeared to be missile launches in the background, I'll state. But like I said, just trying to go through any of the footage coming in so far. Let's see here. Breaking Iran has reported firing ballistic missiles at Jordan's Muwafaq Salti air base with alleged footage of the launches leaving Iran territory moments ago. Tehran is going back to the exact target where it went 0 for 5 last night. The base is hosting U.S. forces in eastern Jordan, whose defenses produced the cleanest interception sweep of the war. Either Iran believes the second salvo finds the gaps the first one could not, while it also hit the what has been attacked several times now, base in Bahrain, which I believe is largely uninhabited as far as U.S. personnel, but that was, in fact, hit with another ballistic missile, taking a direct strike as far as I saw reported in one of the previous attacks. I don't believe that was on as far as tonight's attacks is concerned, but I'm sure we'll learn more as it goes on. Let's see if there's anything else reported here. OSINT Technical says 3 minutes ago, Iranian ballistic missiles seen launching towards coalition targets this morning. So is it already daylight there? What time is it in Iran? Well, let's see. Current. My apologies. I just want to see if we can sift through the bullshit, because right away, current Iran time is 5:53 a.m. So I'm not sure what time sunrise is, but I guess it's plausible at this point in time for it to be daylight at 5:53 a.m., depending on obviously what time zone in Iran we're looking at or talking about. Let's see if we can go back to this one real quick. Just want to check up on that one. Says, new wave of U.S. airstrikes targeting Iran exploded with the number of explosions reported outside Tehran. Bandar Abbas, Bandar Kagan, Vermin, Karaj, Abyek. All looks like they're reporting explosions and being targeted by the United States this evening. What's this one say? Iranian ballistic missiles seen launching. Sorry, let's take a look at this real quick. Because, again, like I said, if it's daylight, it kind of threw me off a little bit. I thought it might be still dark over there. So apparently, as being reported, we're looking at the ongoing retaliation and ballistic missiles being launched by Iran because of the strikes being initiated by the United States. So like I said, just kind of going through some of this information as it's coming in. This just came in 4 minutes ago, 9 minutes ago, like I said, talking about Kuwait and Bahrain under simultaneous Iranian missile attack with alarms sounding. So again, looks like the retaliation is ongoing. This, as we talked about earlier, the Ministry of the Interior of Bahrain sounded the sirens, told citizens and residents to remain calm and head to the nearest safe place. This is from Kuwait as well. Kuwait, the General Staff of the Army announces that the air defense systems are currently intercepting hostile aerial targets in accordance with the adopted operational procedures. It urges everyone to adhere to the security and safety instructions and the guidelines issued by the competent authorities and to obtain information from the approved official sources. Again, that coming from the General Staff of the Army of the Kuwaiti Army. So just showing you the widespread retaliations, again, facing the ballistic missile launches from the Iranians. See if there's anything else reported. Multiple loud explosions reported by locals in Bahrain as Iranian drones attack targets in the country. You can see there detailed on the map. Reported explosions in locations around Al Hamala, Rifa, the Sakir Air Base, Isa Air Base. So as we're just talking about here, let's see here. This was an hour ago. New wave of U.S. airstrikes targeting Iran reported with the number of explosions outside of Tehran. I believe we already went over this earlier. This was the video that we played. So that looks like about the gist of what's coming out so far. Let's see if we can do OSINT Defender real quick. See if there's anything else that we need. We'll just kind of cover all bases here before I get you guys out of here. Much appreciated for sticking with me. See if there's anything else we missed. So this is 9 minutes ago. Short and medium-range ballistic missiles continue to be launched by Iran at Gulf nations following last night's wave of self-defense strikes by U.S. Central Command. Here's just kind of a compilation of some of the footage that we've seen already, some of the pictures there, image received of missile launches from the province of Zanjan, West Azerbaijan, and East Azerbaijan, Thursday, June 10th from Iran. Sirens again in Bahrain, like I said, here in Kuwait. Talked about the Ali Berg class destroyer. We saw that video. CENTCOM announces that its forces completed an additional wave of self-defense strikes. We talked about that. Seems like that's about the latest coming in. Like I said, I'm sure there'll be more and more coming in as these strikes against Kuwait, Bahrain, and obviously the retaliations from Iran persist. So I'm sure when we wake up in the morning, we'll have more video cell phone footage and things to show as far as these strikes are concerned. But what do you say we get you guys out of here just a couple minutes early today? I appreciate you guys sticking with me. Thank you so much for everybody who utilized the Venmo up here. Again, both of my lights have recently gone out. I'm using some janky blue stupid Amazon thing, so I appreciate anybody making contributions as we continue to try to upgrade production, upgrade our set, get better microphones, cameras, lights, and stuff like that to bring you a better production. So I appreciate you guys. Thank you again, Tiff, for letting me know that the sound wasn't available like the idiot I am. And let's just see if we can get into thanking some people who might have been nice enough to send in a couple bucks. Saying thank you so much to Dame Dog in the chat there. He says, let's fucking go now, fo. Right back at you, Dame. Thank you so much for the $10 contribution. Oh, Nancy, goodness gracious, Nancy, thank you so much for the very generous contribution on Venmo. She says, just cuz. Oh, thank you so much, Nancy. And Nancy says that she would very much appreciate some hugs and good vibes from the people in the chat. She's very much worried about a family member serving currently right now, and obviously with the ongoing craziness, our thoughts and prayers, and obviously, like I said, well wishes and good vibes being sent to Nancy, and obviously to anybody right now that has somebody stationed in the Middle East, somebody in the Navy, somebody in the Air Force, whatever it may be, anybody that's related, affiliated, known to you in that situation right now. Like I said, our hearts and prayers go out to you guys, and we're here for you. If you need anything, if you need a shoulder to lean on, if you need to vent, whatever it may be, but we're thinking about you. So thank you so much to Dame. Thank you so much to Nancy. Oh, thank you, Jenny. Appreciate you. Jenny just sent one in. I see you. Just a little something from a lurker. Oh, thank you so much, Jenny Faye. Much appreciated. Always great to see you in the Zooms. Thank you so much for your contributions. Thank you so much for being here in the chat. Please tell Corey I said hello, and thank you guys so much over the last couple of days. Bry Guy, BH, thank you to Yakov. Thank you to who else was nice enough? Nina. Thank you to Allison. Thank you to Jeff. Thank you to Geneva. All of you guys over the last few days that are nice enough to, again, utilize the Venmo. Send in a buck or two. That's all we ask for. Anything beyond that, over a buck or two, is totally up to you guys and your financial capabilities. If you think we're deserving of more than a buck or two, then absolutely. But all we ask for is, like I said, $1 or $2 from everybody in the chat would go a long, long way. So big shout out to everybody utilizing that right there. And when you say we start thanking some people over here on the on the YouTube side of things. Kicked off tonight by Mr. Android. What's going on, Wes? Appreciate you, my brother. Thank you for 26 months of loyalty. I keep hearing clicks, but might be my mouth sounds. You crack me up, dude. You really do crack me up. You never cease to amaze me or keep us on our toes. So appreciate you, Wes. Thank you so much for what you do. Congratulations on being a member for 26 months. Thank you, Bicycle Mike, for your $2 contribution. F Trump, F Cancer, still camping. Well, I hope you're enjoying yourselves. Thank you so much. I figured you'd be tuned out. I didn't know you'd be tuning into Blunt Politics somewhere deep in the woods there, Bicycle Mike, but I do appreciate you. If you're standing out there with like a Starlink or like, some tinfoil and one of those antennae trying to pick up my podcast, I appreciate it. No, thank you guys so much. And thank you, MR. I see you in there. I see that update. MR, thank you so much for the $2 on Venmo, 61026. Much appreciated. Wasn't going to slip past me. I try to recognize and congratulate and appreciate everybody that does send in a Venmo. So you're not going to slip one past me there, Emma. I appreciate you. Thank you to Mike again. Thank you to Independent member for 25 months. Let's go. Really cool to see how long you guys have been, affiliated with the chat, been supporting this community. So thank you, Independent, for everything that you've done. Congratulations on 25 months. And again, W's in the chat for everybody contributing, everybody hitting their milestone. Thank you to Adam as well, member for 14 months. Let's go. Don't forget to park your car. That's my line, Adam. Don't steal my line. Come on. But no, we appreciate you, brother. Hope you're doing well. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be here to sift through the bullshit there in the chat. Very much appreciated for everything that you do. And like I said, hope you have a wonderful night. Thank you to JD for the $10 contribution to the channel. Still better production value than Newsmax. Thank you. Sorry. I know. Sometimes I don't know what people would think of when they tune into the podcast at the exact moment I'm sitting there just with a blank look on my face because I'm watching something on the other screen. But what you guys are seeing is just my dumb fucking face sitting there looking at Candace Owens doing absolutely nothing. So I apologize if anybody tuned in at that exact moment. I promise the production value is a lot better. Typically, I do flub and I do mess up because I'm a human being, but I try to make it at least a little better than that. So, JD, thank you so much, brother, for noticing. I very much appreciate you and your 5 gifted memberships that you threw in there. Can't thank you enough, dude. Thank you for everything that you've done. and continue to do for this channel. It is very, very much appreciated. Thank you to Deb as well. Member for 12 months in this community. Let's go. 1 year. Congratulations. W's to Deb. I appreciate this chat, community, team democracy. Appreciate you for joining the resistance, Deb. I really, really do. Hope you find a welcoming place here. And thank you for joining us time and time again. Thank you to DPD for the $20 contribution. Let's go. What happens in November if the regime is displeased with the election results and this regime decides to run down the illegitimate, corrupt SCOTUS? We already know the Sinister Six could care less about democracy. What happens next? Well, again, I don't know if we get to that point in time. They'd have to be displeased with the election results. So we'd have to get to the point where the election happens and we all show up and do our part to make it so they are displeased with the election results. So regardless of what happens after that, we all need to do our part. We need to do whatever it takes to take back the Senate. We need to do whatever it takes to take back as many seats in the House. We need to do whatever it takes to be supporting the progressive candidates out there, or the candidates that have the best possibility to turn these red districts to purple or purple districts to blue. And that's what we're going to continue to do. So again, all it matters is if you get out and vote. We'll deal with that bullshit afterwards. We'll get out into the streets. We'll start raising hell if that's what it comes to. And that's why we're continuously covering, these ongoing plans behind the scenes, of them intimidating states to hand over their voter rolls, or else, obviously what happened in Virginia, what's going on in Alabama, Mississippi, Texas, all of these places right now. That's why we have to continuously be up to date and up to speed on what they're trying behind the scenes. But like I said, either way, you have to get off your fucking ass and vote. That's it. There's nothing for them to be displeased about. If you don't first, get the hell out of your seat and vote. So like I said, take back the Senate, take back the House. Very, very important. The most important thing right now, the biggest fire to put out, is obviously the pedophile, dangerous, corrupt, demented, decrepit hack that is now sitting in the White House. And then we can figure out what to do after that, and we can hold people to account after that, and then work our way down the line. But it is by far the most important thing to take back power, and then we can deal with the corrupt SCOTUS and whatever Donald Trump attempts after that. So DPD, much appreciated. Thank you so much for the contribution. And thank you so much for the question. It's obviously something that we need to think about. So thank you so much, Jackie, for being here for 7 months. Good to see you. Very appreciative of you guys hanging around in the chat down there. And then tonight, to round it off tonight, is Carol. Thank you so much. 99 Luftballoons. Thank you so much. What is that? The Luftballoons. I love it. But what's the 5? What's the 5? But no, thank you so much, Carol. I appreciate you. Thank you to everybody contributing to the show. Made me think of Stalag Luft. You know what I mean? I thought we were talking about German POW camps. Oh, thank you so much, guys. No, I appreciate you. Everybody sending over a Venmo. Let me just make sure I didn't miss anybody. Quick update, quick refresh, and then I'll get you guys out of here for the evening. No, Emma, Jenny Faye, Damon, Nancy, thank you all so much for your kind contributions. And again, W's in the chat to everybody here on the YouTube side of things that help make this channel grow. And like I said, I think it was another great show, but I'm typically biased in this regard. So you guys let me know how you think I did in the chat. Please hit that like button on the way out. Please subscribe to the channel. If you think you're subscribed, but you're not sure, please check. A lot of the times people are showing up. You keep coming back. You're an amazing part of the community, but you just haven't hit that subscribe button. So make sure you're subscribed. Please make sure you're checking out all the shorts that I put out, whether here, Instagram, Facebook, Blue Sky, Threads, all of these different platforms. You can head over to bostonbrian.com. That gives you links to all of my social media sites. Also on there is a clickable link to the Blunt Politics merch shop, where you can get fantastic merch representing Ukraine, representing the resistance, the opposition, or again, just representing Team Blunt Politics. So make sure you let me know if you grab some merch, take a picture so we can throw it in any of the intros, or maybe we could add it to the website. But yeah, thank you guys for your support of this independent channel. Again, no ads, no revenue, no backers, no financial sponsors or anything like that to the show. We do this kind of from the ground up with you guys and your support only. And you guys, checking out, like I said, the merch shop, your generosity in the chat, sending over Venmos. That's how we do it. And that's how we're going to continue to do it. Nobody has any ability to tell me what I can or cannot say. And that's the way that we're going to try to keep it. So I'll see you guys tomorrow for the Thursday show. That's 2 p.m. here on the East Coast. It's going to be 11 a.m. on the West Coast, and somewhere in between, depending on where you live. Appreciate the mods. Thank you guys so much. Please show the mods love on the way out. And thank you guys for the best chat on earth right here at Blunt Politics. I'm Boston Brian. Make sure you hit that like button on the way out. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Thanks. Appreciate it. Love you.
Вітаю, Бостон Брайан. Мій позивний танцор. Я представник 72-ї бригади. Дякую тобі і твоїм підписникам за цей донат, за цю чудову машину, яка буде нас возити усіх на позиції, захищати Україну і наближати перемогу. Разом усі до перемоги. Дякую.